Rahubat. Greetings. Hope everyone is doing well. I hope I can be heard. Testing. Okay. Welcome to the Actual Facts Podcast. I appreciate you all tuning in again for this great lecture that we have prepared for our people. It is part 2, episode 12, The Destruction of Religion. Today, we're talking about this Hebrew God, the Yahweh of the Bible, the Yahweh of the Jews, this being, mysterious being that billions of people across the globe have worshiped, have converted to their doctrine, and have accepted in many different sects and many different cultures. I hope I'm clear. I advise all to tune in to the end to make sure you get a complete understanding of this being that the religious world has known to have created a fear factor against or of, this being that has designed a hell according to their doctrine, according to religious doctrine, has designed a hell to keep their children, his children, so-called, in after judgment for those that have done wrong, right? And this being who doesn't show his face, this being who so many people are confused about. Some say he's a spirit, some say he's a man, some say he's omniscient. You can't. He's omnipotent, omnipotent. Some people even claim that he's sees everything and knows everything at all times. So real quick, make sure everyone shares to get my Hebrew Israelite people in, the Jews or the Judaic community in, as well as Muslims too. We just did a lecture last week on the destruction of religion as it pertains to Islam. And quite frankly, we're in a day and time where religion has fallen to the wayside. The doctrine is outdated. It is full of beliefs, not facts. It holds no scientific proof. There's no anthropological proof. There's no science or academics that speaks to the authenticity of these monotheistic religions and the concept by which they created this God to be. And this confusion just simply has to stop. Our people have been placed under this 6,000-year-old spell of Leviathan, which is the spell of ghost and spirit worship, right? Where you can accept and convert to foreign doctrines and religions without any proof. You're taught to accept with no facts, only faith, right? Walk by faith, not by sight. Only a blind person, no disrespect, can say that, because walking by faith doesn't get you anywhere. You may walk by faith and not know that there's no stairs. You may walk by faith and not know a car is coming because you're not walking by sight. So here on this Actual Facts podcast, as you know, for those that have tuned in and have supported the fastest growing podcast on the internet, simply because the facts have to remain, the facts are eternal. And so this trilogy of the destruction of religion is going to focus today on the Torah, the Hebrew Bible, right? We're going to focus on the history of the Hebrew Israelites, specifically the Hebrew Israelites. They definitely have to eliminate and get out of our way with this false fear factor that they try to create that you're supposed to have in their God, or if you don't convert or don't accept their God, something's going to happen to you. He's going to hurt you. He's going to send plagues. He's going to send diseases. He's going to send you in bondage. He's going to do all of these atrocities to you, right? At the same time, he never defeats or eliminates his enemy, the devil. And then when you ask these questions, they all the response is, oh, he'll do that in a due time. Oh, Satan or the devil has a purpose. All of these ridiculous excuses or claims that holds no relevancy, because if you're telling me that he's going to burn his children and hurt his children and curse his children for something that he knew that was going to take place, then he participated in the conspiracy that the devil that you claim is his enemy conspired with against humans. If he used the devil or used Satan, as it says in Job, to what? To test his most loyal servant, then him and this devil being are partners. So why are human beings, religious people, in the middle of this conspiracy between these two so-called beings, God and the devil, and they are, having a conversation about who's loyal and who's not? And there's thousands of these particular situations throughout the text that we're going to cover. And as you know, some of our lectures are 3 hours long, which is, and I'm thank everyone for tuning in, which shows that you find value in these actual facts. So please like and sub, all of the videos that you've watched. And this one is very, I don't know what to say about this Yahweh being. As much as we have these conversations, you can always find more and more situations that just doesn't make sense. And not just from a surface level. What we do here is we go into the etymological areas, the linguistic rules. We address the Hebrew. We address the text itself. We address whether or not this biblical text is authentic, if there's an original, who were the authors, where this language, where did it was created, how the Hebrew Israelites came about, because they're trying to use force to dominate the black community and tell everyone that we're all Israelites and we're all from Hebrew, we're all from Abraham, which is genetically impossible. They don't address any, let's say, genealogical records. They don't address any, let's say, nationality records, migration records, nothing that substantiates these claims. It's all a bunch of belief systems. And you know what the word believe means, right? The word lie is inside, be lie. So we're going to go through quite about 4 different areas of this Hebrew Israelites. A lot of people don't know about them because their history is shrouded, because the Hebrew Israelite so-called community don't inform the black community or the Africans in the diaspora, the Africans in America, exactly where they come from. They don't want you to know they come from a Christian group. They don't want you to know 2 of their founding members, or let's say founding fathers of their doctrine, were Christian preachers. This is why they're trying to tie in Jesus or Yahshua of 2,000 years ago of the New Testament into their doctrine, when the ancient Hebrews never accepted a man that would call himself God. So this is why the Hebrew Israelites are not accepted by modern day Judaism. They don't want to tell you that. They don't want to tell you that they don't have an original text, and that most of their Hebrew doctrine was done, or let's say created in the 2nd century AD. It wasn't something ancient. We'll address that. We'll address their father Abraham, who they claim Israel was, right? This is we'll just Abraham, who they say, well, Abraham had a son named Isaac, who had a son named Jacob by Rebekah, Jacob and Esau. They don't address their characteristics or who they were genetically. They say, oh, we all come from Jacob, who changed his name to Israel from a wrestling match. This is in their book, a wrestling match that he had with the angel when he was running from his brother for stealing a birthright that he deceived his father into getting with his mother. So their whole seed is based on deception. Their whole seed is based on lies. And then they try to tie us the entire African race, into one person, that all millions of Africans, billions of Africans across the globe. genetically it's impossible because of the time frame. When you look at it, it's impossible for one person to have one individual Abraham to seed all Africans on the planet. That's just ludicrous, and it doesn't hold any facts. Abraham was a Mesopotamian. He was a Chaldean, which is ancient Iran, right? Persia. So Africans of West Africa, South Africa, the Sands people, and the other Neolithic Africans of Egypt and Sudan and Ethiopia, Djibouti, right, could not have been populated by Abraham, because when Abraham came into Egypt, there were already people there. So they have no historical reference to try to pivot upon to confirm that we all come from, and they're very disrespectful, right? I tried to have a conversation with one in this room, Clubhouse. I think we were on, and they were very disrespectful because they can't deal with the facts. So we'll just address them and destroy destroy this religious doctrine once and for all. We're on part 2. Part 3 is coming on the 9th, where we'll address we'll be crucifying Christianity. And now, first and foremost, we want to acknowledge the Heavenly Father in flesh, His Excellency, Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, the author of over 1,500 books, a divine being incarnated that has incarnated to come to this planet to teach the 144,000 and eliminate these false doctrines and renew your story. Not his story, your story, our story, right? His story is based on his records, other races' records. His story is based on their timeline, their perception, their recordings, their writings. And it only goes back 6,000 years, very limited. So these doctrines that our people have been obsessed with and converted to has caused a lot of religious ignorance and blindness as it relates to the facts. And so we're just doing our job to teach the facts as been given to us by His Excellency Padna Bab Yanun, right? And as you know, we will make reference to several publications. Right now, before we get into the publications, we're going to this is a brief synopsis of the lecture, so you could be aware. We're going to cover the Hebrew Torah and the oldest text, as the so-called oldest text, their oldest text. We're going to cover Yahweh Elohim El and the body parts, the anthropomorphic symbolism and scriptures or quotes in their text that describe this being as a physical being. They always describe him as a physical, but they don't want to address how he looked, what race was he from, how did he incarnate, where he picked up his physical body, was he a part of a group? And we'll address the grammar of Genesis as well, the etymological root of the word God, how it got into their book. The word Elohim is there, is mistranslated as God as a singular. And this is throughout. Biblical scholars know this. For some reason, the Hebrews in their confusion, because they want to be right. And you got some of these converts, American Negro converts, that don't have an identity. So they try to lean and accept people's foreign cultures to try to fit in so they can feel like they have a purpose, right? And they dress ridiculous in these ridiculous clothes, looking like the Osley brothers down there and yelling and screaming at people and using a book that has been used to enslave the minds of your people and using that as a fear factor to tell us that their God is going to hurt us if we don't accept and convert. Those days are over with. So Hebrew Israelites, have a seat, get out of the way, because your doctrine is about to be destroyed and dismantled in this lecture. Just the facts that are there. So we're going to address the harvesting, this bloodthirsty. Why this being always asks for flesh and blood. There's literally hundreds of quotes specifically in the Old Testament. In the book of Leviticus, you'll find many bloodthirsty activities where he's cooking flesh and blood. He's smelling the burning fat and the liver. He's requesting certain body parts of cows, of cattle. He's eating animals with he's eating animals in Genesis 18 with Abraham, right? Abraham goes to his herd and grabs a calf and sits down and prepares this food for this Lord, for this Yahweh, right? Also, this being also admits to doing evil. Many places, such as Exodus chapter 7, he repents for doing evil unto his people. Moses had to remind him that the things that he was going to do was evil, and he said, okay, he's going to repent for the evil that he has thought about. Also, he repented for making this evil being the Adamites. For some reason, the religious world is constantly trying to make our African race, our people, the Africans of the diaspora, they're trying to make you a part of this Adamic group. You want to be a part of this 6,000-year-old race. Let's say this group of people who created evil in Genesis. It literally says that this Yahweh was repenting. The word nakas is there for feeling sorrow or sorrowful. So he felt bad for creating this man because the evil of his hearts were continuous, and he was wicked by nature. And so this being repented, an all-knowing being, repenting for making a man that turned out a way that he did not know, which means he didn't know how they were going to turn out. And if they were created in his image and after his likeness, then how did they become evil in their heart by partaking of a fruit that they claim he planted or Yahweh planted in the tree in the garden in Genesis 2:9? So all of it has to be eliminated because it's too much confusion, and no one really has time for that in this day and time, especially 2026, with the way the world is going and the way the world is falling apart. Religion is going to tumble with it, and it's our responsibility on this podcast, actual facts as taught to us by our heavenly fathers. You see, to eliminate and teach the children of the stars, the children of your ancestors, your story, that you're not a part of this Hebrew text. You're not a part of the Islamic foreign religious doctrines of the Quran. These are Mesopotamian books. They don't have an original to these texts. They don't have these scribes that came out of Babylon who were held in captivity from up until 100 BC to about 70 AD. They came out. They tried to build the second temple. They were placed under bondage again by Darius II under the Achaemenid dynasty, right? For a period of hundreds of years. And they lost all of their text. Everything was destroyed. They got reintroduced to their Babylonian doctrine, right? When they were held captive, Judea was destroyed. You had Solomon and Adonijah who set up these two lands. One was Jerusalem, one was Judea. They were all kept in bondage, right? And then even now, the Hebrew Israelites justify that their Yahweh hasn't done anything for them. No nation to give you, no indigenous language. There's no Hebrew language. Stop letting them tell you there's a Hebrew language. There's no such thing as a Hebrew language. The Hebrew language that you claim is Hebrew language is a Canaanite tongue. It was a Phoenician tongue. And Abraham was called a Hebrew again. He didn't speak Hebrew. So why are you saying if Abraham is your father, you're telling people to speak Hebrew or learn Hebrew when Abraham did not speak Hebrew? Jacob did not speak Hebrew. And we'll address all of this. So this is just a portion of it. Hopefully, if we need to do a part 2 of this part 2, then we will. But it's not. We try to cover everything. And as we move forward and the questions come in, right? Yes, we do have updates on the father, Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, President York. Those we haven't forgot what we're working on as far as his freedom. I will update those that are tuning in, and I appreciate all of the inquiries. I think you should definitely share. You definitely should share this channel real quick for those groups that you're in, right? And make sure that we are tuned in. Now, let's get to these Hebrew Israelites. First and foremost, right? Let's talk about Frank Cherry and William Crowdy. I don't know if you know who these individuals are, but Frank Cherry, he founded the Church of Living God. He was the pillar, right, ground for the truth for all in the year 1886 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So the Hebrew Israelites are not they're not a 100-year-old, 1,000-year-old group. They started right there in the South in 1886 by this guy, Frank Cherry. Now, this church, he was a Christian minister. So technically, the Hebrew Israelites, all those guys that speak about Christians and talk about Christians, your own founder was a Christian. Your own founder name was William Crowdy and Frank Cherry. William Crowdy founded the Church of God of Saints of Christ. This is why you don't know if Hebrew Israelites are Christians, or you don't know if they strictly Judaic, because they adopted a Christian theology and they incorporated it and merged it into their doctrine. This is why they speak about Christ and Jesus and of 2,000 years ago of the New Testament, when no Jews speak about that. So they're offshoot, and they were created by this. Now you can find this in this source. Of course, I'll give you the sources as always. First and foremost, obviously, our sources are coming from the father and his books that he's written, several books that he's written. Let me name them real quick before we get into this. The God, what is the difference? You'll hear from that publication, 360 questions to ask a Hebrew Israelite. So anybody that wants these books after this lecture, just email me as always. I hope those that did get those publications, you're able to you enjoy them. That I made reference in the other lectures. Check out the other lectures, please, for those that are just tuning in. Our Caucasians, Edomites is another one. It's another publication. Actual Facts, Wahwed, A Good and Evil. Wahwed Wahdahwed, which is Wuhdahwed, which is good and evil, right? Dictionary of deities of demons in the Bible. We'll address that. And even the El's Torah. Now, our Heavenly Father, His Excellency, right? The Father in flesh, had written or translated the Torah for the Hebrew Israelites to assist them. For those that are stuck in those monotheistic doctrines, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, Hebrewism, or Mosesism, he wrote a book called The Degree of Mosesism for them, and translated the Torah from the oldest text for the Hebrews to get right in their minds, so they won't have to keep following after these bloodthirsty beings. And we're going to find out why these extraterrestrial beings, why these Yahweh or Elohim had bred this man in Genesis. We're going to get into the real hereafter doctrine and their real purpose, right? But we just want to give you a history first. So this Frank Cherry, right? Particularly Frank Cherry taught the Talmud. So he taught the Torah as an authority. So the Hebrews picked this up. So they teach from the Torah. And Jesus will return. They also he taught that because it's a Christian doctrine. The Hebrew Israelites picked that up and say, well, Jesus is returning. They believe in Yahshua returning, that he returned in the year 2000, which, right, this is what they teach, right? And they said he was going to return in a square earth surrounded by a 3-layer heaven. So he taught that this was a square earth. This is their doctrine. You can find this in David Blaine's Black Jews and the halakhic perspective tradition, a journal of Orthodox Jewish thoughts. Also, you'll find it in Stepping into Zionism, Hazad Harishan, Black Jews and the Remaking of the Jewish Identity. This is a publication you'll find by Janice Fernheimer. As in 2014, on page 10, you'll find the history of the Hebrew Israelites and where they started. So Frank Cherry and William Crowdy are their founders, not Abraham, not Isaac, not Jacob, none of those beings that they claim. They didn't get a doctrine from them. They got it from two Christians. So they're really a Christian sect. So they shouldn't really be arguing with Christians. So let's do that. That's clear. So we understand where they got that from. Now, when we get into this Hebrew language, let's address this really quick. Now, Hebrew as a language, right? First of all, it's the Phoenician. It's really Phoenician tongue. The Hebrew means to cross over. It's a verb, right? It comes from the word ibar or ibri or abra or abara, which means to cross over a specific area. So it wasn't the name of a language. It was the name of a person. It was the name or the title given to a person who was moving about. And this is specifically Abraham, right? Or Abraham, coming from Ur of Chaldeas, the land of fire and demons. Look it up. right? We talked about this last week, but we reiterate it. He came from Mesopotamia in the land of fire and demons, Ur of Chaldees. This is where they worship a pantheon group of beings known as the Anunnaki or the Elohim. These are a group of beings, two groups, the cherubim and the seraphim, that you'll find in your biblical text. You'll find the cherubim in Genesis, right? Also, you'll find the cherubim in Exodus as the beings who were protecting the Ark of the Covenant. And you'll find these cherubim at the gates, headed by Enlil and Nanar, who were a part of the Elohim, or one of the groups, one of the beings of this group that we'll address, that we are addressing, obviously. But I didn't want to address the group. I'm just dealing with the specifics of these cherubim and seraphim. These two groups come from this bloodline of beings who they claim as a singular when it's translated from a group form. Meaning, in Genesis chapter 1 and in chapter 2, you'll see a distinction laid out there. You'll see in Genesis 1, the first chapter, you don't see the word Lord. If you look at Genesis 1 through chapter 2, verse 2, you see, and God said this, and God did this, and God did that, right? They say that this is a singular being. This is the biggest confusion on the planet. Everyone reads this book in whatever verse or chapter or language it was translated to or from, and is translated as a singular, which is misinformation because it's a group of beings. And these group of beings had settled in Mesopotamia, had settled in this land called Babylon, right? Bab Elan or Bab El. You'll see El, Elohim El, Bab El, which is a doorway to El, also meaning a door or a way of confusion or a land of confusion. You'll see that in Genesis 10. The point is that these are Mesopotamian cultures where Abraham, coming out of this land, him and his father Terah and his grandfather Nahor were worshiping and acknowledging these beings in Mesopotamia. And you'll find that in Genesis, where he set up a specific altar called Shechem when he had an agreement or created a covenant with this Lord or this Yahweh. You'll see that in Genesis 17, right? But when this Abraham was watched coming into the land of the Canaanites, right? These Canaanites called him in Hebrew, called him Ebar, and said, right, he, the one who transverses, because he was coming into their land and he was given land because they didn't have land. So first and foremost, the Hebrew Israelites never had a land. They came into the land of Canaan. And if you look up the Canaanites were a group of descendants who were cursed with the disease of leprosy. You'll find that in Genesis 11. You'll find it in, Leviticus 11. You'll find the leprosy was placed as a plague in the house of these individuals. And throughout Genesis, you'll see Genesis 25, where they were warned, the children of Abraham was warned, though they were in the area, they were warned not to mix their seed with these Canaanites. And I'll get into those verses. You know, we have a lot of verses to cover. I'm just giving you a synopsis on how this Hebrew Israelite doctrine is metamorphosized with misinformation, claiming that this Hebrew is an identity when it's not. They came into the land. So if you say Abraham had a son by Sarah, right, and by Hagar, which was Ishmael, and his other wife, Keturah, right? Let's deal with Sarah specifically, that she had a son by the name of Isaac, who had two sons by the name of Jacob and Esau. One was hairy, right? Esau, which was Edom or Edomia. When you look at the word Esau, it means red or hairy, right? This is where they get the word Sa'ir from. Literally, it translates as hairy or Sa'ir, which is a description of a goat or a devil being, right? Which we get into in one of episodes. We talk about these different creatures of the Bible, the freaks of nature in your Bible, right? The different types of wolves and lion men and serpents and dragons, all these different creatures you'll see. We'll touch on that. But this being Esau and Jacob, they claim Jacob had deceived his brother by placing a animal fur on his skin. And when they came into the land, right, of the Canaanites, and Abraham has set up this altar to one of these lords, one of the gods, one of the Yahwehs out of this pantheon, right? This group of beings known as the Anunnaki in the Sumerian text. They became known as the Elohim in the Hebrew text, or the older text where they copy from. And we talked about that, how the Genesis story, the biblical Torah, was copied from older texts or older tablets. Now, when you see that this Esau and Jacob had a fight, or basically a argument over who would win the birthright, you'll find out that Rebekah assisted Jacob into deceiving Isaac, who was in old age, and placed this fur on on Jacob's arm, and told, right, the father, Isaac, that this was the one, Esau, and he gave them the blessing, which was deception. Now, Hebrew Israelites want you to think that out of that seed, that one seed, right, that all of Africans in the diaspora, all of the Africans across the world came out of that seed. And because he had what you call wrestled with an angel, let's get into that story, because the word Israelite, when you look at that, the word Israel, according to Deuteronomy, right, Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 12, the word Hebrew is not the name of a tribe or people. It's the name of what Abraham did, not what not what they were. Let's move to the word Israel. Yisrael in Arabic or Hebrew or Israel means El prevails, right? And it was first used in Genesis 32:28. And he was the brother of Esau running. He was running from his brother in fear of his life. Now, this word under the Strong's number is 3478, right? When you see that, you see his mentioning is describing an act of people moving one side to another, not a nationality. It's literally a verb. It's not a noun, and it's not an adjective. So you can't say this is what we are. So when you look at the word Israel again, right, you'll see that his sons were not named Israel. Him and his mother committed an evil act and was running. So if you want to claim and convert to a doctrine of a people who were being evil and deceptive and lying and stealing, go right ahead. And you wonder why they don't have anything, because they want you. You don't wonder why you're not getting any help, because you're claiming an evil seed. So claiming an evil seed from a Yahweh who placed you in bondage, you're not going to get anything from this being, because all he was requesting was for sacrifices. And this being has a specific name, and he comes from a specific bloodline. Yahweh is not the most high of this book. It literally means the living one, a living being, an existing one. It doesn't describe his nature. You'll find in Exodus 3:14, I am who I am. When Moses asked, who should I say sent me? He said, I am who I am. So he went and said, oh, he who is. It doesn't describe his characteristics. It doesn't describe his emotions. It doesn't describe any of that. It just describes that he is alive. So when you read the areas in the book where it says that he was jealous and he's angry and he's revengeful and he does evil, you have to question this Yahweh, right? And because the converts don't question, they don't have an idea that this being is literally bloodthirsty. He is a being of an evil race of extraterrestrial beings who have incarnated under the disguise of the word Elohim. There, he's walking and talking in Genesis, asking questions, testing human beings, and he's showing a very human-like behavior. He's not giving. Most people say the Most High was talking, knows all things, and then they say, well, this being was asking Adam, where are you? That's not the same being. The being that you're claiming is the Most High, is the father of these Enlil and Enki, who was Yahweh and Baal. Who are these Anunnaki? They're the Elohim of Genesis. Who is this Yahweh? Yahweh is one of the beings out of the group. And we have to rehash this over and over, because one of the beings out of the group is the same as a devil who you say was of an angel who came out of the group. You can't say that, okay, there's no evil beings in heaven. or the evil beings don't come from heavens. You can't say that, because you can't acknowledge the devil and say that he was an angel who became bad. Because if he was amongst those beings and this God knew the nature of his creation, then he was aware of the nature of this Satan or this devil who you claim is responsible for the evil all over the world, which is confusion, because there is no one being responsible for all the evil on the planet except your Yahweh. If you read Genesis chapter 2, verse 9, as I spoke to before, when you read that verse, you'll see that it was this Lord that brought evil to the planet. Genesis 2:9, and out of the ground made the Yahweh of the Elohim. And this Strong's number 430, right? Strong's number, and keep your questions. Make sure you put your questions in the chat when questions open up, because I don't want it to move up. When you see this word God 430, this word God there, literally it will tell you Elohim. The Yod and the Mem at the end of a Hebrew word denotes plurality. It is a plurality for a masculine form of a noun. This word Elohim is literally says plural in the definition in the Strong's Concordance. It says plural of 433 gods with an S in the ordinary sense, but specifically used in the plural in this verse. And throughout Genesis 2, you see this word. Genesis 1, Genesis 2, you see God, the same Strong's number 430 is in the very first verse. In the beginning, Elohim did this. And the Father had, for 30 years, had taught that this was a group of beings known as cherubim and the seraphim that came down to the planet. The translators mistranslated it and added the word Gad, which is a word for troops or group. Look up the word Gad. But the word God is German, right? The word God as a German word from the word Gudan comes from a Nordic deity by the name of Woden or Odin, who was the father of Thor. When they translated the Bible from German, right? Pardon me, not from German. Well, yeah, into German, and then the Germans introduced the words into the English. When you look up the English language, a lot of the linguistic roots of these words have other languages in the English. The German word God was introduced into the English. It didn't originate in English. So when you read the word God, you're not reading the word God from the Hebrew text. You're not reading the word God from the Arabic language or the Semitic languages. You're reading a word that was introduced into English from the Germans, from the Wulfila Bible. Look up Wulfila Bible, Wilifia. When the Romans tried to convert Europe and converted the Nordics, the Nords and the Proto-European up in Germany, they did not want to, let's say, do away with their Nordic deities. So what they did was they said, well, we're going to use our deities in our translation. So they kept the word God in their book, just like they kept his son's name Thor in the days of the week. We talked about this in one of the lectures, Secrets of the Sacred Feminine, when we talked about time and how they use their gods in time. Well, the word God was introduced into the Bible that you use today. It's not an original word from the Hebrew. The word in the Hebrew was Elohim, and it was in reference to a group of beings. It wasn't until Genesis chapter 2, verse 1, where you get the word Lord is introduced. Literally, the word Lord, the first time you find the word Lord is in Genesis chapter 2, right? Verse 5, actually verse 4. Right, you'll see it in verse 4. You see, and these are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. Generations, that's important. Generations. The reason it speaks to my point that they were genes. There were generations of beings that come back, that some of them become physical, some of them are spiritual, some of them can incarnate, others stayed in the spiritual realm. The ones that became physical were the evil seed that began to rape this creation that you find in Genesis 6:5, where this, 6:3, where this group of sons of Bain Elohim, the sons of these beings. You'll find that also in the book of Enoch, where this 200 fallen the Elohim, the gods, right, who were under El, right, who was Enlil, and a Yahweh came out of that who was responsible for the garden and breeding and assisting in breeding this new being, this Yahweh who was preparing the laboratory or this environment, preparing it for this new creation in a specific area known as Mesopotamia, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Iraq. They bred this being there and created an environment for to test and see how this being would behave, because he was bred from different creations or creatures that were already on the planet. It is not the beginning of all of creation. This is only a 6,000-year-old story, and they already acknowledge that it only goes back 6,000 years. So how did these beings pick up, and how did they come? Well, they came as a group, and that's why they had a conversation. That's why it says, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. And then Yahweh in another verse says, I will make man to look like me. He formed man from the dust of the ground. That's a Yahweh. One of the beings is talking. The group are having a conversation, and one of the beings are responsible for doing these things. This being has a name. All of these beings have names. El is not a name. Yahweh is, again, Hebrews were like, stop lying to people saying the name of the Lord is Yahweh. No, it's not. It's literally all biblical scholars, and I'll get into this. Some biblical so-called scholars that you depend on, that you rely on, have said that it's an expression, right? It's not a name. Let's get into some of the so-called biblical scholars. I'll go back, but I just want to give this while it's on my mind, where J.A. Morter explains this in the Revelations of the Divine Name. Leicester, these are your Jewish Hebrew scholars, not my scholars. I'm just giving it to you so you can look it up yourself, because you accept them as your authorities. We don't accept them as the authorities, though they have facts in their books, right? But they will tell you that where they call it the usual idiom ma would be who is his name. The distinction is suggested to mark a request to know the character of the being, not the name. This is J.A. Mortar. He argues in the book Revelations of the Divine Name. Also, Rahubat, everyone. Appreciate you tuning in and sharing, sub and like, please. Now, let's get to another one of your Hebrew Israelite so-called scholars or Jewish scholars. C.R. Gianotti, he argues, Eyer Asher Eyer, I am who I am. This is where they say Yahweh means I am who I am. The Tetragrammaton, they go into Yad, Wow, Ha, Wow, and they say this is no, it's not. It's not coming from me. These biblical scholars, C.R. Gianotti, the meaning of the divine name considers the verb. They say this Yahweh is a verb. It's an act of living. The description of I'm alive. As an alive being, you're doing living things. You're acting as a living being. He never gave the beings or his subjects their name. It's a reason why these beings or Anunnaki or Elohim didn't give their subjects the name, is because you could summon them at any time if you knew their secret name. And you could call upon them and they would have to answer. They didn't want to give their subjects the name because they didn't consider them, they didn't look at them as someone who was worthy of to be prayed to. They wanted sacrifices from them only. They wanted to use them as food. They wanted to abuse them. They weren't creating them out of love and concern and God loves you and the Lord loves your nature. He loves. No, that's not why they were bred for that. You'll find it in Genesis 17 when Abraham goes into the mountain. He said, let us go worship the Lord. The first time you find the word worship, let's find that. You'll see it, right? The word worship is in Genesis 22, pardon me, I said 17, 22:5. And Abraham said unto his young men, abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship. This is the first time you see this word. So stop telling people Yahweh wants you to worship. No, he doesn't, because this word worship is in the form of a sacrifice. Abraham took the wood and the burnt offering. That is what Yahweh considers worship. That's why every instance, in order to appease this being, this bloodthirsty being, you had to give a sacrifice, and then that was their form of worship, of fire. You worship at the altar where fire was lit, and you had to bring animals and human beings to this God, to this Elohim that Abraham was aware of. And Abraham was made an agreement that don't eat us. Don't give out. We will willfully give you the sacrifice. We will willfully give you blood. This is what Noah did in Genesis 8 and 9, where he gave the blood offerings and the burnt sacrifices to this Lord in after the flood. That was a form of worship. Abraham knew that in order to worship these beings, you had to give a sacrifice. Cain and Abel knew the same thing. They had to give a form of sacrifice, and Abel sacrificed one, the flesh and blood. And this is throughout the book. Stop looking at this as from some religious thing and go into your text and let's read it. It says in Isaac, this is in 22:7. Now, when I said Genesis 17, this is the covenant that was made, but this is where the sacrifice was being done. And Isaac spake unto Abraham, his father, and said, my father, and he said, here am I, my son. And he said, behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? See, Abraham thought that, Isaac thought that they were going to execute or sacrifice a lamb. Abraham said, my son, Elohim will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. He lied to Isaac. He already knew he had to sacrifice Isaac. So he told him, well, the Elohim will give for the sacrifice. But this is what they call worship. So when you say that I am who I am, or Yahweh is this loving, caring being, this is not what we find here. And it's not a name. Let's move forward. And the reason why I'm saying it's not a name, because the Father expresses and told us in these actual facts the name of these beings. And you can find it through older texts, the Sumerian text, 4,000 texts in Nineveh, where Abraham is from, that area, Mesopotamia, where Abraham is from, on tablets, the same tablets, symbolic. You see the same tablets that Moses received. So that the ancient texts are on tablets, and you see the name of these beings on tablets. And I'm going to give you the references as well about who the names are. This being Nanar is the being of light and fire. This is the one that's responsible for the sacrifice. And he is a Yahweh. The serpent of the garden is a Yahweh, a living being. The Enlil of the biblical text is a Yahweh. Moses was made an Elohim. You can be made a Yahweh. So Yahweh is not a title exclusive for one being. It's not. Contrary to what there were many Yahwehans. There were groups of Elohim. The Anu or El Elyon that you see in Genesis 14 introduced to Abraham by Melchizedek, Melchizedek, right, or Michael. You'll see that it uses the word El Elyon in the Hebrew, right, as the Most High. Yahweh can't be the Most High because the Most High didn't, Anu, what's his name, didn't come down to the planet. You never see him intermingling with human beings. There's not one instance where you see El Elyon, the Most High God, talking and asking for sacrifices amongst these groups. This Anu was of a heavenly throne, but it's not these are not your deities. I have to reiterate that Africans of the diaspora, Africans on the continent, these beings, these gods of the biblical text are not your gods. Yes, they are deities. They're from a specific star system. Job 9:9 speaks about these star systems, Arcturus, Orion, this heavenly abode that the religious world has no idea where they come from. But they are revealing themselves in this day and time. You have to be aware of who this Yahweh is, right? And all of these characters, so you don't get caught up in worshiping and going into a mosque or going into a synagogue trying to seek out these beings because they're going to ask you for your sacrifice from your body, your mind, and your soul, or someone from your family, or someone from an immediate environment that's thousands, millions of religious people die every year in the name of their God because these gods are requesting sacrifices from their servants. These are not yours, but the Yahweh of this book is not even his name. Let me get finished moving forward to this, right? Now, it says the Old Testament a scholar, so-called scholar by the name of Walter Zimmerly, argues that he has a book called Old Testament Theology and Outline. It says Hebrews must take into account God's refused to impart his name. The Elohim refused to impart his name to Jacob as he wrestled at Jabbok. Why do you ask about my name? You see Genesis 3:32-29. He asked Jacob that because Jacob asked him the same thing. Why do you ask about my name? He never gave him his name. He said, I simply am. Now, this Yahweh or Elohim was refusing to give his name even to Moses and to show his face to Moses. This is in Exodus 33:18. Let's go there real quick so you'll see that this being has a face. So people say, oh, Yah's a spirit. No, he's not. He has a face that he refused to show Moses. Let's read it. And he said, and the Lord said unto Moses, pardon me, go back. It says, and he said, I beseech you, show me the glory. Let me go back here. Let me pull up 34. If thou now have found favor and grace in thy sight, O Lord, let my Lord, I pray thee, go amongst us. So the word fayim, right? Let me pull that up real quick so we can see his body parts real quick, because we touched on that, but we didn't really get into it because I want to go on his body, his face, so you see he's not spirit. Now, face to face, Exodus 33. It's in 33:11. Pardon me. I have a lot of notes, so I keep things organized. It says, and the Lord spake unto Moses face to face. So he's not a spirit. You see the word fayim there, right? Panim, pardon me. Pop from the word paneh, which means something that moves from side to side, something that turns. So he does have a face. So, and when he speaks about Moses, speaking to Moses, and they asking him his name, he simply says, you don't know my name. I am who I am. And now let's move forward. There's another, let's say, scholar by the name of C.H. Rothschild Warden and work in Berlin finds three meanings for the verb. Again, they always make reference to this Yahweh as a verb, not a name. Haya, verb haya, to be, right? Which would they say haya, which is life, to be or to become or to live. Haya, aya is a first person singular. Yahweh looks like a third person singular. So when you see Yad, Ha, Wa, Ha, that's a third person singular. It translates as I am, translated from Haya, from the Strong's number 1961. To exist. Haya means to exist. That I am, right? I am means to exist. That is to be. That I am. So I am that I am means to exist. That is to be. And to exist, that is to be. It's literally a double tetragrammaton meaning the same thing. I am who I am, or I am who I will be, not a name. Case in point, when Moses heard the phrase, I am that I am, he would have relayed it as he is who he is. Now, that covers that. That covers that. So this name of this being is Nanar, because people will say, oh, okay, so the religious world says, well, this is name. No, it's not. So Yahweh is understood to be a being, one who has a face, right? What else does he have? He has a beard. According to Isaiah 7:20, shall the Yahweh shave with a razor, right? Job 1:7, he spoke to the Satan. So this being didn't know Satan was there. He's not an all-knowing being. Yahweh is not an all-knowing being. He's a physical being with physical characteristics as a deity, one of the group of the gods of the Anunnaki Elohim out of Mesopotamia that created or bred the Adamites for food and for work. That's it. They wanted a man. They have not found a man to till the ground. Not, hey, we need men to worship us. That's not what it says. It says we've not found a man to till the ground. When you read Genesis 28:13, this Lord, he stands on top of a ladder. Literally, they have it there. Go to Genesis 28:13, and the Lord stood above it and said, I'm the Lord of Abraham, thy father. Angels stood descending and ascending. So this being has what you call feet, obviously, right? He flies in chariots in Psalm 68:14-17. Let's go to Psalms, right? How is this being flying in the chariot? When I was speaking to the Hebrew Israelites and I was saying, well, listen, this being travels. This being travels intergalactically. Oh, that sounds ridiculous. Well, explain to the people what these chariots are in chapter 68. Thousands of them in verse 14. Let's go there. When you read, it says 14-17. It says when El Shaddai, right, another name of this being, scattered kings in it, it was white as snow. Go down to 17. It says, the chariots of Elohim are 20,000. What are these chariots? Well, why don't you explain what the chariots are, religious people? Are you saying that the 20,000 chariots, right? 20,000, even thousands of Elohim? It says literally that in verse 17. And the Lord is amongst them. So this Lord is sitting in a chariot. Is he coming from heaven? Is he sitting like he sits on a so-called throne? Is he walking? How is he directing these chariots? Does he have hands to guide the direction? Does he have a butt to sit? Does he have a mouth? Yes, he has a mouth. It says it it literally says famam. It speaks about his mouth in what verse is that where it speaks about his mouth? Let's go to his verse where it speaks about his mouth, right? It uses the word famam, right? It says he has beard, he has a beard, he has eyes. Oh, here you are. Ears, right? Where's his ears? It says in Psalms 18:6, even unto his ears. This Strong's numbers 241. The ear, literally Genesis 4:48. It literally says ear. Genesis 44:18. Speak a word in my Lord's ears. 241. Ozen, literally it says ears, right? He has a voice box, which shows he has a mouth. Genesis 3:8. The voice of the Lord. This Strong's number 69:63 is the word kol or kale, a voice or sound. Genesis 3:10, I heard thy voice. So this being has physical characteristics. He has eyes, right? So when you talk about this being, that's not, yes, I meant that's why I was trying to find the face in Exodus 32, right? So when you talk about this being, you have a physical description of him literally in chariots. The chariots of God are 20,000, 11,000 angels. Thou hast ascended on high. Thou have led captivity captive. Thou hast received thy gifts of men. Yea, for the rebellious also, that the Lord Elohim might dwell among them. So he dwells and lives amongst these people. How do we know who this being is? Well, we find many things about his character, right? And not only that, not only is his character questionable, there's many areas of this being that speaks to evil activities, right? Where he tells his so-called converts, people who convert to this doctrine, you have to do a lot of killing for this being. Genesis 22:1 through kill, he tells Abraham to kill your son, right? He tells you to kill animals in 3:21 of Genesis. Let's go to Genesis 3:21 where he says, kill these animals. And unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skin and clothe them, right? This being killed animals to make coats of skin. So he has to kill animals to eat. He has to kill animals for coats of skin, right? He has to do all of these things. Genesis chapter 2, verse 9. Place evil in a tree. Why is this Lord placing evil? Why do they say that this evil being, the devil, was responsible for evil? When you read the word evil in Genesis 2:9. This is where this evil comes from. It doesn't come from this devil. It comes from your Lord. It says literally, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the Lord God placed out of the ground, made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, and the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge. When you say knowledge, you're saying that everything about evil is in this seed, not in the mind of this devil, not in the mind like people try to say, oh, the devil created evil. Not knowing they're putting their foot in their mouth. How does a devil create evil if he's not a creator? You can't create something if you're not a creator. The moment you say he created evil, you're worshiping the devil. You're giving him just as much power as your God. And this is the biggest deception, that you have a God or Lord, right, that you said created an angel that didn't know he was going to create evil, didn't know this devil was going to try to overcome and destroy or go against the throne of God or the throne of the Elohim. And all of a sudden, he just creates this opposing force that is responsible for everything on the planet, responsible for all the diseases, all of the pestilence, all of the wars, all of the hate, all of the everything that's the starvation, the pestilence, right? Everything that you can think of. You're saying that this devil was responsible for that, but when you read the book, this is why they don't want you to read this book. This is why the Father has written these books, and he was targeted because he was waking you up to this evil reptilian species that have passed themselves off as your Lord, as your God, so you can continuously give them sacrifices and give your soul and your mind and your body over to them and all of your energy and not get anything in return. This being he placed evil. So he's responsible for all of the evil on the planet. He's responsible for the devils and the killing and the murders and the rapes and the robberies and the pest and the diseases and AIDS and COVID. He's responsible for that. You're Yahweh, your Lord. He's over this cherubim, this group of evil beings. It says, right? Let's go to Exodus 32:14. And I'm going to let the Bible talk. Your book, 14, it says in verse 14, and the Lord repented. This same word, nasham or nakam, it means to sigh, to by implication, to have pity, to repent. And this word used 41 times. And it says, 14, and the Lord repented of the evil which he thought to do unto his people. So now you have a Lord that does evil. He introduces evil in a tree and places it there and nurtures the evil. This being watches evil grow in a tree. That means you came like a watcher plant to make sure that all the knowledge came to fruition. And in order to test Adam to see if they're going to do it, something you knew they were going to do. As you were planting the tree, you knew they were going to partake of the tree, Yahweh. You knew they were going to fail and become become tricked. Yahweh, you're the Lord or Yahweh of the Hebrew Israelites. The Hebrew Israelites, answer that question. Why did your Lord watch this tree grow of evil and then let Adam go partake of it in his mind, preparing to hurt and destroy all of his children? That's narcissism. You're setting up your people to become with evil, and you say, I'm going to test them to see if they're going to find out or to see if they're going to be obedient or not. And this is the illogical, they call it a genetic fallacy, where someone presents an argument, an argument to substantiate an argument that was false in the beginning. You can't say that your God or Lord knows all things, and yet he wanted to see if Adam was going to eat of the fruit to test him to see if he was going to be obedient. This is the ridiculous argument that they try to present. Oh, well, it's just like your father. If your father tells you don't touch the candy, but he knows you're going to touch the candy. But if you touch the candy, he punishes you and whips you because he wants you to do the right thing. Well, anything that God wants, it will happen regardless, The moment your God, according to religion, thinks about a thing, let there be light, let there be water, let there be earth, let there be sun, if he wants it, it's going to happen. How can you say he wants you to see if you're going to partake of the tree and take of the tree of knowledge of life and partake and do good? He wants you to do good, yet, right? He doesn't know that you're not. He doesn't know or warn you that the serpent is in the garden. He doesn't inform you that I have an adversary there, because this being was evil and he was wicked. And he was amongst a group of other beings who had a conflict amongst each other. That's why they were jealous of each other. These are beings, a pantheon group of beings, two groups arguing and warring against each other, the cherubim and seraphim, from Enlil and Enki, two sons of Anu, El Elyon, that Melchizedek introduced Abraham to, that no one knew about because Enlil was over one group, Enki was over another group. El Elyon, who's the highest of all of those beings, all of those Elohim, right? The two brothers had conflict amongst each other prehistory, way before the biblical text. They were fighting because of a family throne and who was descendancy to the throne with Alelu, which is a Sumerian story, and Anu Alelu taking the throne or trying to take the throne of Anu, and Enki siding or receiving a wife from Alelu, and which caused Enlil to become angry, and a conflict was created out of that in prehistory or pre-biblical text that you have no information about because you don't want to read outside the Quran or outside your Bible. So you don't know how the conflict became introduced into the Bible and how now they are jealous of each other. I, your God, am a jealous God. Don't have other gods. He's acknowledging there's other beings. He's acknowledging there's other Yahwehs. He's acknowledging there's other Elohim. They're acknowledging that. And they say, I'm jealous of them. Don't have them. I want you to worship me. Give me the sacrifices. Give me the blood offering. I smell it when you burn it. It smells good. It pleases my what? Let's get some of those verses where he is pleased by that. And there's many verses. You'll find it in Leviticus 1:9. It's a sweet savor to the Lord. You'll find it in Leviticus 2:19 or 2:9, where it says, offered to the Lord a sweet savor. All of this is about a barbecue, animals, flesh. Read Leviticus chapter 4, verse 1. You'll see how they literally take a goat, not a goat, a cow, and cut the cow's throat and pour the blood in the tabernacle. And they literally dip their fingers, hands in the blood, put the blood at the tabernacle door. They have always involved themselves. I'm going to read it, and it's going to sound crazy because this is what reverends, rabbis, Hebrew Israelites, they don't want you to read this. It says, if the priest that is anointed do sin according to the sin of the people, then let him bring for his sin, which he have sinned, a young bullock. What does the young bullock mean? This young bullock is literally a cow. It means parpar in the Hebrew. A young bull, a calf. You know how huge bulls are? Have you ever seen a slaughterhouse and how much blood comes out of a bull? It says, which he have sinned, a young bullock without blemish unto the Lord. Why is this Lord interested in bulls and cows? For a sin offering. He shall bring the bullock unto the Lord of the tabernacle of the congregation. He shall lay his hand upon the bullock's head and kill the bullock. And the priest that is anointed shall take of the bullock's blood and bring it to the tabernacle. Why are you bringing blood to your so-called holy place and bringing it in front of the Lord? That's just one verse. 3 verse 5. Let's go to 3 verse 5. And Aaron's son shall burn it at the altar upon the burnt sacrifices, which is upon the wood and is on the fire. More fire offering. It is an offering made by fire. Fire is Nanar. Nanar is the son of Enlil. This is he has a temple, a ziggurat in Chaldees where Abraham came out of. Abraham was familiar with this being. He already knew he had to kill something for this being. And if you read this verse right here, it says that this fire, it is an offering made of sweet savor. So they had to make it specific, the smell. These beings that incarnate, these Yahwehs, these evil beings, not all of them are negative. Not all of them are evil. You have seraphim and then you have cherubim. But they're a specific race that you do not know how they behave, because only a being from that race or from that group has to teach you where they're from. This is why they besought out these beings to learn from them. The problem is that the Canaanites or the Adamites and their bloodline, they were responsible for the covenant made with these beings. You had no connection to these beings, but you're trying to tie yourself in to those beings. You're trying to say that we're part of the Israelites, we're part of the Canaanites, we're part of the Moabites, we're part of the Hittites, we're part of the Arvadites, we're part of the Amorites, we're part of the Girgashites, Jebusites. You want to be a part of them so bad, and you don't even know that the beings that created those Adamites created them red, ruddy, and evil, and they had to control them with these Levitical laws and Levitical commandments in order to keep them, because they were becoming evil amongst the planet. They were killing already in the land of Nod. When Cain went to the land of Nod, he found killers there. So they were already killing on the land. Everything, right? When you read it, you see that he says, if everyone finds me, he told the Lord after he killed his brother, right? Which this Lord, this killing Lord who loves blood and flesh, protected a killer, Cain. He didn't protect Abel. I need y'all to wake up to this foolishness. You can see it right in your book. I didn't even get into the actual facts. I'm into the actual facts. I'm talking about the ones that the Father has written, which is much more detailed. We're just dealing with surface information in your biblical text that you'll see that this being, Yahweh, did not protect Abel, and Abel gave him the offering that he wanted. He was a sheep herder. Abraham kept the what? The animals. Why was that a favor? Why did he accept Abel's? Because he loves the sweet savor of flesh and blood. I'm giving it to you raw and exact. No religious, no Allah, Yahweh loves you, he's coming down out the sky. None of that BS. Those are lies. They've been lying. The Hebrew Israelites are lying. The Judaic community is lying. The Nation of Islam are lying. Who else is lying? I didn't even get into the Christian sect, right? Because they so-called did away with it. But their God, their Yahweh that they accepted, their Christ is the bright morning star, or the light, right? What they say is the fire, which is the same fire of Exodus, where Moses saw this Lord burning in the fire, the same fire that Abraham set with the wood and the fire offering that we just read in Genesis 22, the same fire that you read right here with Aaron offering sacrifice, right here, of peace offering unto the Lord, be a flock, male or female, it shall be without blemish. And it says, where we at? Where we read about? The verse 5. Go back. That is on the fire. It is an offering made by fire. Why so much fire? The Holy Ghost comes down and catches people, the fire of the Spirit. This is all from Nanar. The word Nanar means Lord of flames or Lord of fire. His name is also Shattah, which is the one who's of the sacrifices. Let's keep going. Genesis 3, we got Leviticus 3:5. Let's go to Leviticus 17. When you go to Leviticus 17, you'll see verse 6. It speaks about, and the priest shall sprinkle the blood, right? You have the blood there. Sprinkle the blood upon the altar of the Lord. What Lord is this? This is Nanar, the son of Enlil, of the Elohim, the being that was over the cherubim, the ones with the flaming swords of fire. Again, in the garden, where he placed them at the garden to keep man from going in and out, this being who's the anointed cherub were over those cherubim. This is the same one. Let's go to another verse. You see this, right? So this is blood. This is in your book. You accepting that these beings are playing with blood. And you try to argue with us. You try to argue. That's why they don't address this Actual Facts podcast. That's why they run from this Actual Facts podcast, because all the religious world, I'm talking about your Tazariak, I know all of them. They won't have a debate with us, because they know when we address their Yahweh, I'm not going to address their character, because I don't know none of them personally. I'm going to address your God. and have your Yahweh come forth and answer these questions. Why is he allowing people to continuously play in blood? And he's appreciating Leviticus. Let's go Leviticus 23. Leviticus 23:13. Let's read it. It says, and the meat offering. Now we get into what the food is. Because not only are they saying the fire, but why is he interested in cutting up the animal? Because they enjoy the meat. And this being loves the meat. He eats meat. He ate it in Genesis 18. It says, the meat offering, therefore, shall be 2/10 deals of fine flour mingled with oil, an offering made by fire unto the Lord for a sweet savor, right? And the drink of the offering, therefore, shall be. This word wine is ambiguous because it's not always translated as wine. Wine is symbolic in Revelations as blood. This is why it's going to sound crazy, but it's going to come out. These beings, you have to be taught this. Sometimes it's difficult, but it's very real. This is where you get barbecues from. This comes out of the Levitical practice, the Leviticus practice. When you look at the Levitical priests, Google Levitical priests, they're going to show you men in chef's attire. They have the chef hat, they have the apron, they have these knives because they're cutting this flesh and blood, the parts for this Lord, this Yahweh, this Nanar, these cherubim beings who was raping and raping. And read the book of Enoch, chapter 10. It speaks about how these beings came. They started having sex and teaching them human beings about witchcraft, and they passed the spell of Leviathan over onto you, hidden in this blood worship. Right? You'll see that. But when they were cutting up the animal, there's certain specific parts of the body of the calf that the Lord would enjoy. It says, but back to the barbecue. When you put flesh and blood on in a barbecue, what do they do with all the extra blood? There's really gallons and gallons of blood. They would make a spice out of it. They would add spices into the blood, all types of spices and things of that to make it a sweet savor. This is why you see oil right there and flour right there. Right there in Leviticus 23:13. You see oil and flour because they would cook it, they would put it on the altar, and they would mix spices in the blood and pour the blood over the meat, which is the same thing you do, which you created as barbecue sauce. It's symbolic. So they do the same thing. And this is why it's practiced today. People gather around and eat a bunch of pigs, a bunch of cows, a bunch of ribs, a bunch of gizzards, a bunch of feet, a bunch of snouts and tails and liver and butts. All these are animal parts that they eat. Let's get into this animal part. You'll see it. 23:13. We read that, right? Let's get to 23:18. Go to 18. You'll see the type of animals that they're looking for. And ye shall offer with the bread 7 lambs without blemish of the first year. This is your veal. They like specific types of animal, which is veal. This is why they say in the first year, because the veal was tender. And 1 young bullock and 2 rams, that they shall be burnt offering unto the Lord. He has a nose. These beings are 10, 12 feet tall. Look up the temple at Baalbek, and you'll see. The temples of Baalbek, you see these huge temple doors of 15 feet, 20 feet high. And they say, then ye shall sacrifice 1 kid. This is not even a part of, I'm not even addressing the cannibalism and the eating of human beings that the Lord requests. Yes, we're going to get into that. We're going to destroy this doctrine, this Hebrew Yahweh doctrine, this loving, caring being. Let's address what he truly asked for. None of the Hebrew Israelites, I don't see y'all bringing no cows down on 42nd Street. Bring your cows and your sacrifices to the corner and show the people what your Yahweh really wants. You're not doing that because you're being deceptive. You're trying to lie and make us fear this being, right? Which they try in the religious world, make you fear so you can come forth and give them anything without questioning. And you don't question right here in your own book. Why is this being offering meat? They shall be a burnt offering unto the Lord with their meat offering and their drink offering. Let's go to another verse. Leviticus 1:9. I'm all over Leviticus right now. Yeah, because you have all of this and you can listen to it over and over. But his inwards. His legs shall he wash in water, and the priest shall burn all on the altar. So the inwards are your heart, your liver, your spleen. I don't know if cows have spleens, whatever inwards it is, right? On all on the altar to be burnt to a burnt sacrifice, an offering made by fire of sweet savor unto the Lord. And if his offering be of the flocks, namely of the sheep or of the goats, for a burnt offering, he shall bring it male without blemish, and he shall kill it on the side of the altar. When they tell you to come down to the altar in Christianity, when they tell you to come down to the altar in the synagogues, the altar, they have an altar, they have a Minzal Rab in Islam. When they tell you to bring these sacrifices, they're not telling you that they're Allah, they're Yahweh, are bloodthirsty, reptilian, Anunnaki beings from a star system that look at this planet as a harvest. It's in your revelations. Google harvest. That's all we're going to go through. I'm just saying for those that want to do it fast and you blown away, because I know some people have to be blown away by this, right? When you see that, right? Okay, so when you see that, and he shall kill it on the side of the altar, northward before the Lord, and the priest Aaron's sons shall sprinkle his blood round about on the altar, and he shall cut, verse 12, and he shall cut it into pieces, right? With his head and his fat. So they want the head, they want the fat. The priest shall lay them in order on the wood that is on the fire, which is upon the altar. There you go. More. Let's go to 113. Oh, I read that. Let's go to 2:2. Right there. It's right in the beginning of Leviticus. And when any will offer a meat offering unto the Lord, his offering shall be a fine flour, and he shall pour oil upon it and put frankincense there. And that's the sweet savor. And he shall bring it to Aaron's his sons, the priests, and he shall take there out his handful, the flour thereof, and of the oil, right? Thereof, and the priest shall burn the memorial of it upon the altar to be an offering made by fire of sweet savor unto the Lord, your Yahweh. So they have a lot of explaining to do. Let's go to some more verses. 421, 431, 421, 31, 21 to 31. And he shall carry, verse 21, and he shall carry forth the bullock without the camp and burn him as he burned the first bullock. It is a sin offering for the congregation. 621, burnt the whole ram on the altar for a sweet savor, offering of fire unto the Lord. 21 is right there. Look it up. In a pan it shall be made with oil, and when it is baken, thou shalt bring it in and bake it pieces of the meat offering. So they're cutting up the meat. Abraham knew this ritual. When you go to Genesis 18, Abraham was aware of this ritual. Let's go to 18. Let's go to about verse 9. Right? Let's go back. And the Lord appeared unto Abraham in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent in the heat of the day. And he lift up his eyes and looked, and lo, behold, right? What happens? 3 men stood by him, and when he saw them, he ran to meet them. So they came as men. They came physical. This is not unknown. He's physical all throughout the text. He has a face. We went through several verses. He has arms, right? He has legs. He even winks in Acts 17:30. You'll see, and God winks. So this Lord winks, right? You'll see it also in Amos 9:8. Behold the eyes of the Lord. The Hebrew word is ayin, literally eye, 5869 in your Strongs. So it's not like they're not physical beings. And if you are physical beings, you're subject to physical laws. What are the physical laws? Food. You have to sustain the physical body. And Abraham was well aware of these beings and how huge they were when they incarnated onto the planet. Their appetites was incredible. They're eating whole cows, whole goats, entire animals that Noah left on the altar. They're eating an entire meal. Okay, Deuteronomy 28:53. Just remind, let me get to, hold on 1 second. Let me mark that row. 28:53. Is that the verse? There's a question in the chat for those that are 28:58. Okay, let's see real quick. I can get back to that last verse. If thou wilt not observe to do all the works of this law that are written in his books, that thou may fear this glorious and fearful name. 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, that thou shalt see it no more again, and there shall be sold unto your enemies for bondsmen and bondswomen, and no man shall buy you. Okay, I'll explain that. Because a lot of people under interpretation, when they say Egypt, they were in reference to Egypt pre-dynastic Egypt, or it was our Egypt. It wasn't our Egypt. By the time this verse picks up and this so-called bondage, they weren't in Egypt. They were in a land called Goshen. That wasn't Egypt. It was in the near what you call Jerusalem. It was near the land of Canaan, actually, where these Israelites or so-called Canaanites coming out of the land of Canaan, because it was famine in the land. The reason why Jacob and Abraham came into Egypt is because their Yahweh wasn't even feeding them. They gave them lands of famine. So you ask them, why would your Yahweh send your people to Egypt if he could provide for them? Because he couldn't. The same way he couldn't provide for them in the forest or in the woods when they were eating manna, which is a fungus, for 40 years. This is how he treats these Canaanites. This is how he treats these Amorites. This is how he treats those groups that were worshiping him, because they were Adamites who were evil. It wasn't you. So they try to create, the Hebrew Israelites try to say this is our culture because they don't want to identify with Africa. A lot of them are Europeanized, and they want to worship the Mukasu and worship the Caucasoid and his religious doctrines, and spin you down the wrong alley to a God that's not giving you anything. And all he's going to do is, if you listen to them, all they tell you is how wrathful this God is, and how much he's going to hurt you, and how the anger of Yahweh is going to come down on his people for being disobedient. And they make you afraid because they don't want to really explain that this being is not bringing or helping the Black African race, because they can't. They're not your gods. Simple as that. And until you give it back, the reason why we become such in a miserable state, the reason why we're not getting our prayers answered, the reason why nothing is coming to the Black African race, because you're praying to everyone else's gods but your own. The moment you start acknowledging Africa, you see Africa is on a rise. The moment you start acknowledging your ancestors, your bloodline, your descendancy, the moment you start appreciating what they gave you and love yourself, and stop always wanting to be abused by other people and be enslaved by other people and be so tormented and thinking about a hell when you die, the moment you give that crap back, you will be in a better position. But you're so caught up and converted, and I'm a Hebrew, I'm an Israelite, and I'm of Jacob's seed. You're of Jacob's seed. You're a Mesopotamian then. You're a Chaldean. You're not African. They don't accept you. Why are you not in Israel then? Go over to Israel and talk that crap to them. Don't talk it to us, because we don't want to accept you, because we know we're not of that seed. Go to Israel and tell them you're of Abraham's seed. Go to Israel and tell them you're of Jacob's seed. Go to Mesopotamia. Go back to Babylon. Go back to Iran, where Babylon is, and tell them you're of their seed, and see what happens to you. You don't want to do that. You want to mingle amongst us and try to convert and live off of the souls and the innocence of our people in the name of a being that, I'm telling you, is at requesting sacrifices. And when they come back in the book of Revelations, as it says, they're going to feast on the flesh of human beings, bodies of horses, bodies of kings, and other animals on the planet, flesh and blood of kings and bonds, people enslaved. It literally says this in Revelations 19:19. So these are not, when they came into Goshen, the spell is, when you see this word Egypt, to your question, when you see Egypt, people think the Egypt that you see today on the map. That's not what's talking about. It's talking about a small area that they claim to came in and was in so-called bondage. There's no archaeological proof of that. There's no evidence. There's no DNA or any artifacts even found in the area to show that there was a Hebrew or Israelite kingdom. They rely on a few stelae that they claim, oh, it says Israel there and it says David, the house of David there. So all of their doctrine is hinged on two stelae, the Mespes stele and another stele. I'll have it in my notes. I'll pull it up. But it's just ridiculous. So it's like saying that, okay, so they went into Egypt into bondage, that it was us. It wasn't. Goshen was as small as a small area. Like, that's like saying you come into America and you were in bondage in America. It appears, the word appears as though you were in bondage to all of America when you were in a small area in Brooklyn. And then you write it as we were in bondage in America. The rest of America didn't know about you were in Brooklyn. And then when you were in Brooklyn, you mixed in with everyone else and you come out 60,000 strong, but you claim to be a separate people. You're Egyptian. If the Hebrew Israelites say they come out of Egypt, you came out mixed. So even still, you're still of the Egyptian seed. So you're still of the African seed. So don't tell us and secondly, another thing, which is a lie, 10 generations from Noah to Abraham, when they say the whole world was destroyed, right? According to Genesis 8 and 9, the flood, most religious people are under the impression, they think that the entire planet was flooded in water, and it wasn't. The entire planet wasn't flooded in water. Why? Because Egypt was in existence when Abraham went into Egypt. And that was literally 10 generations down. How did 10 generations from Noah, right? Ham, Shem, and Japheth, how did the entire Egypt become what? Populated, built. We have our own culture. We had our own magic. We had our own everything there. And Abraham goes into Egypt looking for land. And you're saying we're all the same people coming from Noah. But he goes and finds an entire group of people in Egypt that had no connection to the Hebrew Israelite story. But yet he goes in there, gets land, and then lies to the Pharaoh, right? Lies to the Pharaoh that Sarah was his sister instead of telling him the truth that it was his wife. And Abraham is the one created the conflict between the Yahweh of Mesopotamia and the deities of ancient Egypt. Because if the story is true, if Abraham goes in and he lies and says, well, I was afraid because he was a punk. He didn't want to protect his wife. And then when the Pharaoh saw his wife and then these so-called plagues, why didn't Yahweh inform Abraham to tell the truth? If you believe in your God is going to protect you. Yahweh is going to protect you so much. So that conflict was made from Abraham and his lies, more deception. So the whole point is that this is not the Egypt by the standard of which pre-dynastic Egypt or the Nubians, ancient Egypt that we know today. That was a mixed group, and literally it says the Egyptians against the Egyptians because these were already mixed Berbers coming in from the Asia, and you had the Turks coming in, you had the Persians coming in, you had the Ottomans coming in, you had the Greeks coming in, you had the Romans coming in, you had all of these individuals, especially the Arabs decimated, all of these individuals coming in. By the time the area by which the immigration camp, basically what it was outside of the control of ancient Egypt, you had in between the Fertile Crescent in that area, you had Mesopotamian kings and communication between the pharaohs of Egypt and that area, but they weren't allowed to come into Egypt. And if they did come into that area of Goshen, they were mixing in. So it was a bunch of mixed breeds. So it wasn't no pure Israelites and pure Egyptians. They don't have their story because they go off the biblical text, and the biblical text is limited. No biblical scholar nowhere on the planet uses the Bible as a source of historicity or as proof of substantiating a biblical story. They always go outside the biblical text for other documents and use it in textual criticism. So you don't find that. You don't find people relying on the biblical stories because it's nothing outside to corroborate whether they're factual or authentic or not. So because they don't have the originals, which we get into. But this Yahweh is described that in these older texts as a physical being. Let me get into that. Some of these quotes Thank you for welcome, Levi. I appreciate you all. Right, I appreciate you all joining in. For those, please share. How long we? What's the time on? I can't see the time any longer. Oh, okay, 1:34. Okay, so let's get into who this Yahweh being is. Back to, because we read most of these verses. We try to cover. We were in Genesis 18. We were talking about how they ate and how they were physical. But however, in some extra biblical text, I'll give you some extra sources, right? But the sources from the Father, to email me some extra sources for you to confirm or find out some basically outside sources, because it's a lot. There's a lot of outside sources that speak to Yahweh for those that want to explore, especially the Hebrew Israelite family. So one book called Monotheism and Yahweh's Appropriation of Baal by James Anderson. Yahweh as a Leviathan deity is listed amongst the Canaanite Eucharistic deities. The reason Yahweh is listed amongst them is because they were all Canaanite deities coming out of Mesopotamia, and they were sacrificing. These Canaanites were Caucasoid descendants of the Adamites. The Adamites were bred wicked, and they were evil continuously. And so they had to continuously sacrifice, and they were interacting with these beings. And Yahweh was one of them, and amongst the others. Yahweh as a Levantine deity is listed amongst the Canaanite deities, right? As well as the Mesopotamian deities, the Anunnaki. This is a list of some of these Yahwehs. These are all Yahweh, all a part of the Elohim. There's literally thousands of them, like you read in Psalm 68. Thousands of Moloch or Malachim, they're called, or Moloch or Melech, where they get the word Malak or Malachi, which is a king or a ruler or a Elohim. These are these beings. They have different names in your text depending on what book you're reading and the language it was translated to. It's all linguistic. So it says Mesopotamian deities, one of the Adonis, Anat, Asherah, Ashmia, Astar, where they get Ishtar from, where they get the word star or astrology. That's where they got that word from. Azizas, Baal, Mordegod, Baal Sapan, Baal Gabal, Shamash, Dogon. Dogon is in the book of Judges. That's a fish deity. He's always also a Yahweh. All of these Canaanites were worshiping different beings, depending on the influence on the tribe that specific Elohim or El or being who was ruling, right? Depending on which area or which influence and which agreement or covenant was made with that being, then you'll find these beings throughout the text. But the one that the Hebrew Israelites chose was Nanar because of the sacrifice, and he was the one that was devouring human beings. He was the one that the Canaanite, in the book of Deuteronomy, where Moses sent the 12 spies up into the land of Canaan, and he saw the Anakites eating up the inhabitants. They would eat up the inhabitants if you didn't agree or give them the food that they wanted. That's why Abraham made the covenant, because he was aware, like, okay, I'm not going to bother. I know this being. Let me give them what they need. So this is these. I'm naming these beings now. Sakun, Shadrafu, Shahar, Shalim, Adad, Ishkar, Inki, Ea, Enlil, Gebal, Nanayah, Shalah, Nanasin, Nergal, right? Shamash, War, Zababa. So this is a list of them. So in the book called The Religion of Ancient Israel by Patrick Miller, he says Yahweh was first worshipped. The first time recorded in the early Iron Age in 700 to 1 BCE, and likely to the later Bronze Age. This is where Yahweh was first recorded. He was not first recorded worship since the beginning of time. He's the Most High God, Yah Allah. As they got this room called the Yah Only Room. I go in there sometimes and listen to a few people, a few good sisters, a few people in there that mean well, but they just don't have the proper information. They're just misinformed, right? So you'll see that this is when they worship. Now, Monotheism and Appropriation of Vow by James Anderson, it says that the discourse adhered to overall biblical scheme, strict Yahwistic monotheism were born in the days of Moses. So this is where they have the time frame. Now, the Oxford History of Biblical World by Michael D. Cogent, Yahweh is described as a physical being. The Yahweh is amongst other elves. So you have, I hope I'm clear on this. Please let me know if I'm clear. I just have to rehash it, to reiterate it, because these are some people don't know this information. Let's read some of this. It says, over the millenniums, many new Mesopotamian gods were born and many old ones died and faded. Some gods were regional. That's why I said the specific area where you'll find different Canaanite beings or Adamites. They were worshiping these beings. You find that first worshiping in Genesis 4:26, I think, where it says, and man began to call on the name of the Lord, not worship. They just began to call on the name of the Lord. The name of the Lord, not call this God Lord. It doesn't say that. It says call on the name of this being, of this Yahweh. So that particular one. It says, now, some gods were regional ones, while others were born like Edom and Enlil and were more universal. The reason why Enlil was more universal because he was over a group of cherubim. He was over a massive fleet of these disagreeable beings. And these are the ones that came down and saw the Adamites and began to rape them. When you read in Genesis chapter 6, let's go there real quick. 6 verse 5, it says, and in verse 2, it says, Bain Elohim, that the sons of Elohim, the sons of the elves, right? This El was Enlil because he was more universal. He was known as a storm deity. He was the one that brought the storm, the flood, the one that was to eliminate this creation because they were breeding and they were evil. So he was going to eliminate them in the flood. And that's why he was more universal, because he had control over the cherubim. This is the garden story. And the two guards you see at the gate, his son was Nanar. So these were the ones in that garden. And they hated the serpent. The serpent was Nin-Gizida. We discussed this in earlier episodes, but we have to go over it now, obviously, because people are coming more and more to it and understanding it. And the more and more we reiterate these actual facts, the more and more it will become clear and people will begin to see things on their own. So when you see this Nin-Gizida, this serpent in the garden, people say, how did he get in the garden? Well, he was amongst the Elohim. He was amongst the Anunnaki. He was amongst the Anunnah. He was one of the characters, one of this serpent or this whisperer or divine secret enchanter, because he knew the secret of this Enlil, this serpent, Nin-Gizida, Zahutwi, knew what these other deities or other Anunnaki didn't want Adam and Eve to know. That's why he said, this God does know that in the day you eat thereof, you're going to be like us. You're going to have a certain amount of knowledge. And you're not supposed to have that. And they don't want you to know, but I'm going to whisper it to you. And I'm going to tell you that this being is a liar, because he knows in the day you eat thereof, you're not going to surely die. And when they ate the fruit, they didn't die. And their eyes began, wow, this being is a liar. Let us hide from him. Let us run from him. That's what really happened. So they ran, and the Enlil was angry and was looking for them. Who told you to do this? Why didn't he know the serpent was in the garden? He should have known. Have you eaten, or you partook of the fruit that I forbade you not to eat? And then he said, well, the woman you gave me, he's asking around because he's not an all-knowing being. This is not the most high God, like religious Yahweh. These Hebrew Israelites try to make it appear. It's not the case. And he did lie. People say, well, he did lie because they died. They eventually died. It doesn't say in verse 2:17 that they would eventually die. It uses the word yom in the verse. It says, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day, this word day is yom, is used for the hot part of the day in the Hebrew. Stop lying to people saying, oh, they eventually died because 1,000 years like a day is like 1,000 years. If that's the case, then 1,000 years will be between sun up, sunrise, and sunset, because that's what day means in this verse. In this verse, literally, definition, the Hebrew Strong's number is 3117. It says yom, for it's used as meaning to be hot. as the warm hours, literally from sunrise to sunset. So this lying Enlil and Nanar says, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day thou eat of it, thou shalt surely die. And what happened in chapter 3, verse 5 or 4? And the serpent said unto the woman, ye shall not surely die, for God does know that in the day ye eat thereof. The same word is used. The reason why you know it's a day is because the same word is used in Genesis chapter 1. For the word, and God called the light day and the darkness night. It's the same Hebrew Strong's number 3117. So stop lying to people saying they eventually died instead of acknowledging that this Lord was a liar. It says, again, in the day ye eat thereof, thou shalt surely die. The serpent says, well, God does know. The Elohim does know thou shalt not surely die. He knows that in the day ye eat thereof, your eyes shall be open. This Nin-Gizida, this serpent, this Zahutwi being, was aware that this being was lying to them. He was in the garden because he was amongst them, and he shared the same information, and they spoke the same language. He didn't get in the garden. If he got in the garden as an intruder, why didn't the Lord know about this? Why didn't Enlil, or this God, all-knowing, all-seeing, everywhere at all times, he doesn't know this being is in his house? That the first house on the planet, that he placed gates and put guards up. He doesn't know that this serpent got into the garden. Where did the serpent come from? He was the most subtle of the beasts of the field. That's the most smartest, the most intelligent, right? Out of the beasts of that the Lord God had made, this being, out of all of the beings, he was the smartest out of all of this other creation. Not that this Lord created the serpent. That's not what it says. It says the serpent, or this Lord, was more cunning than what? Any beast of the field, which the Lord God, or this Yahweh of the Elohim, had bred. Not that they bred the serpent. It was just that this being was more intelligent than the rest of the creation. And in that, he was aware of what this Enlil Lord was keeping from these beings, keeping from this new Atta, Adapa, and Titi, of their Sumerian names. Let's say Adam and Eve for the biblical, for conversation purposes. But let's read verse 5. It says, for God does know that in the day ye eat thereof, your eyes shall be open, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. This is what this serpent said. People say, oh, he deceived. Where's the deception? What is he? He's asking a question. He said, did the Lord say? The question was, have Elohim said to you, ye shall not eat of every tree? That's a question. That's not deception. The woman responded, and the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. Right? Fruits of the tree, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said, ye shall not surely die. For God does know, Elohim does know, that in the day ye eat thereof, the day you eat thereof, what's going to happen? Your eyes will be open, ye shall be as gods, and ye shall know good and evil. These are the 3 points that this Nin-Gizida, this being, this serpent, this one who was wise, told Eve. 1, your eyes shall be open. 2, you shall be as gods. 3, right, you will know good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, right, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband, and he did eat. And the eyes of them both were opened. Where is the lie? Did their eyes become open? Who told them that? I just read the 3 points the serpent said, or this Nakash, or this being said in verse 5. Your eyes will be open. And in verse 7, and the eyes of them both were open. God does know that in the day you eat thereof, your eyes will be open. In verse 7, and the eyes of them both were open. What else does the serpent say? Knowing good and evil. And the very next verse, in verse 7, the eyes of them both were open. And then it says, and they knew that they were naked. They knew good and evil. This being says the same thing. So there is no deception. They don't know that they have been deceived. Our people worldwide, it doesn't matter if it's one person saying it, in a billion, 2 billion, it don't matter. The facts are the facts. You have been deceived by these beings, one Nanar that wants you to worship their gods and give you flesh and blood, because when they come in the last days, it's in a preparation for a harvest. From a harvest where they will, right, harvest. But now, questions. Rahubat, everyone. I've been talking hour and 49 minutes. I hope you are enjoying the lecture. If you have any questions, put it in now. Put it in now. Thank you for joining in. Rahubat Zamal watching from, oh, my good brother. Appreciate you all. Rahubat, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Levi. Appreciate that. Reye. Also, Satak, appreciate you. Rahubat. I wish you share this live. Share it. We're going to be streaming for some time so we can get some clarity. Any questions? Let me address questions. Who you serve and to whom you offer just and flesh. Okay, there's some great quotes in here. If you have any questions, especially Rahubat, Elder Nahisi, tag and bring these Hebrew Israelites. I know y'all know some Hebrew Israelites. We want everything. We want this to come out today. It's going to come out in this lecture. We have a lot to cover. As you see, every time we discuss the destruction of religion or things are going to take place, it happens. You're going to see it in the news. You're going to see people turning on each other. You're going to see the religious world fall apart because there's no more confirmations. People have lost their faith. They realized it was lies. They knew that they know that the Bible is not an original book. You want to address that. The biblical text is not the Hebrew is not a spoken language. It wasn't spoken until the second millennium BCE, right? Between the Jordan and Mediterranean Sea, known as Canaan. So they don't have a language. The Israelite tribes established a kingdom in Israel in the north and the kingdom of Judah in the south. After a disputed succession, the kingdom of Judah was destroyed by the Syrians. So there is no kingdom of Yah. There is no kingdom of David. There is no kingdom of Jehovah. It was destroyed in 722 BCE. The kingdom of Judah was conquered by the Babylonians in 596 BCE. So there is no kingdom of Judah. There is no King David coming back to establish nothing. That has nothing. There's not, all of them were destroyed. The upper class were exiled. So even in the Hebrew Israelites doctrine, where they say, well, the upper class was exiled. These were the ones that kept the so-called Torah. They were exiled into Babylon, and everything was taken from them. Later, right, and their temples was destroyed. This is their history, the Hebrew Israelites' history. Later, the Persians made Judah a province and permitted Jewish exiles to return and rebuild the temple. When they came into the temple, they brought back Aramaic. They didn't even speak Hebrew. Hebrew wasn't even spoken. It was a lost language. So they didn't record none of the text in Hebrew. So stop trying to hold up the Bible. We have an original. You don't have a Hebrew Bible because none of your scribes survived it long enough to speak the language, because after generations, they lost it. According to the grammar, Hebrew was similar to Aramaic. All right. So let's move forward. Now, where do they get the earliest transcriptions? Right. And when did Hebrew cease to be spoken? Hebrew literally stopped being spoken as a language. What they call Hebrew now is Yiddish. It's not the Hebrew the language that they claim that Abraham spoke, which he didn't. It happened in 200 CE. They stopped speaking it, right? During the Second Temple period, Hebrew began to be used for liturgical purposes. So no manuscripts of the Hebrew Bible dates before 200 BC. A century ago, Hebrew was not a spoken language. The Ashkenazim Jews spoke Yiddish, a combination of Hebrew and Yiddish. The Sephardic Jews spoke Ladina, right, which is a combination of Hebrew and Spanish. So the question is, where did Hebrew come from? Rahubat, everyone. Share this space, subscribe, and like, right? So where did Hebrew come from? It comes from Akkadian, So-called Akkadian is not called Hebrew, those Canaanites. From Akkadian, one of the languages of the Sumer, the earliest known documents of Sumer recorded in cuneiform, the language of the inhabitants of southern Mesopotamia and Chaldees. So Hebrew Israelites, again, if you want to teach people correctly about a language, teach them the Chaldean language that Abraham spoke, not some created Canaanite language that you tagged yourself onto that was spoken by mixed seeds of the Canaanite tribes and the Jebusite tribes, which Africans are not a part of. Stop lying to the people. Implications. Okay, let's move forward. Now, when did it first become written? The earliest inscriptions. Earliest inscriptions, 10th century is different dialects. So you may see it spelled different ways. Born King. We don't look like anything. There's different, not amateurs, just different ways to say it. Different. Some people are just learning too. So it's okay. Put it in the correct way, and then people will learn from that. Tawatek, though. It says, when you look at earliest inscriptions of Hebrew listed as back as the second millennium, right? 10th century, 901 to 1000 BCE. You see, this is the earliest inscription of Hebrew. So people say, well, we have old texts, we have old documents, no, you don't. You have literally a small limestone tablet with an early Canaanite inscription. It's a small inscription in ancient city of Gizar, 20 miles west of Jerusalem, right? Scholars are divided on whether it is the language of Hebrew, Paleo-Hebrew, or whether the script is Phoenician or Proto-Canaanite. It is the earliest attestation to the Tetragrammaton predating the Meshe Stele. And this is the early history of gods, Yahweh, and the ancient deities of ancient Israel by William B. Eardams. Right? Yeah, Eardams, publishing author Mark Smith. Then you have two Astra steles, or they call them Astraka, Tel Kassil, found in Tel Kassil, then part of the Mandatory Palestine. So these are the two inscriptions. Another one is the votive inscriptions from Kuntilat Adrud. These are a series of inscriptions found at Kuntilat Adrud, which is a 9th century site in the northeastern part of the Sinai Peninsula. Site excavations in 1975 by Tel Aviv University archaeologist Meshel. The excavation report was made in 2012, was published in 2012. These are the earliest inscriptions that they lean in literally all of their doctrine on. It's very scant, and it's not substantial. Okay, so now we found out where the Israelites come from. So let's move forward a little bit, because I want to address the actual history of the names. Yeah, because there's many names of this Hebrew God or Yahweh that they say, oh, well, this is what the Hebrew Israelites, the Jews say. Well, his name has many names. He has all no, these are names of this different beings. That's what people are under the impression. They think this is the name of the same being. No. Throughout the Old Testament, out of that pantheon that we just read, that were under Enlil and Enki, you had thousands, literally thousands, and their names were different. Their titles were different depending on who was writing. And you can't determine who was writing because there are no originals of none of the Old Testament. There's no original Jeremiah. There's no autograph. I'm talking about handwritten. I'm not talking about, well, we got a copy of a copy. I'm talking about the handwritten of Ezekiel, the handwritten of the book of Isaiah, the handwritten of the book of Joel, the handwritten of the book of Malachi, the handwritten book. Where is that? So we won't be confused. You don't have it. In those books, these beings' names, some of them was Adonai Yahweh. Then you had El Shaddai. El Shaddai pops up. It occurs 8 times. One time it's in Genesis 17:1. It's known as the Almighty. You can be the mighty of evil. You can be powerful in your evil practice. Just because a person says the Almighty doesn't mean you were positive. Just because you use the word Lord doesn't mean you're a good being. Religious people are under the assumption because they say, oh, this being is a God, then it's a good being or it's a Lord. No, we discussed this before. and you see the character. You see different names throughout the book. You see El. You see El in the book of Psalms chapter 10, verse 11. You'll see Eli in the book of Psalms chapter 22, 1. You'll see Elo in the book 2:4 of Genesis. Elohim in Genesis 1:1. Yahweh Elohim in Genesis 4:2. El Shaddai is in Genesis 17:1. El Roy is in Genesis 16:14. Yahweh El Elyon is in 14:18. That's the highest. That's the Melchizedek. Melchizedek introduced Abraham to this being. Adon is in Genesis 15:2. Then you have titles. Yahuwah El Olam, Yahuwah Yireh in Genesis 22:14. Yahuwah Nisi, Genesis 17:15. Yahuwah Shalom, Judges 6:24. Yahuwah Shema, Ezekiel 48:35. El Rab is the same word. El Rab is the name used in the Quran, right? And when they say, read in the name of your sustainer, read in the name of Ikra Bismi Reb, Rebecca, or Rebecca, read in the name of your sustainer. Your sustainer, or El Rab, is in Proverbs 26:10. Yahuwah Zebawal, Samuel's 1:3. Yahuwah Meshach, Isaiah 60:16. Yahuwah. So these are titles that these beings, right? Different beings, different from Nanar to Enlil to Esherah to Ishtar to Ningal to Ninherta. These beings that was in Genesis chapter 10, the us in Genesis 10, they pop up there as well. When you go to Genesis 10, you'll see that these are the same beings in that came down to see what these beings were doing. When you read it, right? Let's go to Genesis 10, right, where it says, actually 11, right? It says, and the Lord, this Yahweh, came down. That's how you know he's not all places and everywhere at all times. I'm in Genesis 11 for those that are following me. It says, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass as they sojourned from the east, right, that they a plain in the land of Shinar. This is in Babylon. When you go to the land of Shinar, you're talking about Babylon, right? Look up the word Shinar. It's in a plain of Babylon. Is used 8 times in the Old Testament. Well, Shinar is where these beings were. We just discussed that the Anunnaki and Elohim has settled in Shinar, has settled in Babylon. When Nimrod took his people to this land, Rahobat, everyone, what he encountered was who? It says, and they were one to another. Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they made brick and stone and slime, and they for mortar, had they for mortar. It says in verse 4, and they said, go to, let us build us a city. So they wasn't just building a tower. They went into Babylon to build a city. This is the land of the Anunnaki. This is the land of the Elohim. This is the land of the cherubim and seraphim. This is where Abraham came out of. This is your Torah gods. These are your Torah deities. This is not your African deities. These are not your Nathar, your overseers. These are not your blood descendants. These are the records of the Adamites of Mesopotamia. This is your biblical text. These are their records. The Quran is an Arab, Iranian, Mesopotamian, Babylonian, Allah. These are the same gods, same beings. Allah is Elo, El, and Enlil, and Enki. These are the same beings. Just the language you speak, you have different words for them. So when Nimrod goes into this land and they said, let us build a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. In verse 5, the Lord came down to see. He had to come from where he was to the planet to see the city and the tower which the children of men had built. They make a distinction. The children of men, not the children of Elohim. The children of Bain Elohim, you see, when they came down, they were raping. They were raping and killing people. Who kept records of Enlil? Who kept records of Enlil and Enki? The Mesopotamian tablets, the text of the tablets that's spoken of in the ancient stone tablets. we had a lecture on this. I think it's series lecture, I want to say 5. Yeah, in lecture 5. There's records of these same beings in cuneiform in Nineveh. Look up the Chaldean account of Genesis. You'll see that reference there in the Chaldean account of Genesis. You'll also see it in the literary text from the Temple of Nabu and the Nimrod letters, the Governor's Palace archive in 1973, the tablets of Fort Shalmaneser, 1984, and documents from the Nabu Temple and private house of the Citadel. This is a royal library of Nineveh, 10,000 tablets to answer your question. This is where they kept these records and the stories. Izudubar series contained 12 tablets on the 11th and on the 11th tablet and on K231, and on the 6th tablet, it speaks about the Great Deluge. It goes into specifically who these beings are, the names of these beings, and what cities they were over. Literally, it speaks about it. And in the cuneiform parallels of the Old Testament by Robert William Rogers. But the true story, to answer your question, if you're new, I don't know, please subscribe, sub and like. We have actual facts where the Father mentions all of these texts in Pafaak Mukwanu, Pa Mukwinu. This is the supreme beings. Also in Wahwed Wu Dawao, good and evil, he mentions this. Also in what do you call Pa Anunnaki and the biblical and the Quranic race. He mentions the records of these Enki and Enlil. What you have in your Bible, when they merge the stories, the Scott or so-called biblical translators was not aware of who was who. So they just said, oh, this is a Lord here. This is Yahweh here. This is a Shaddai here. This is a mighty one here. This is Elohim here. They had different characteristics for different beings. When you got the text, when the religious world got the text, when the Hebrew Israelites and Muslims got the text, they read the same, they read all of those beings as just one. And say, okay, we worship one God. No, it's only one God. One God, Allah. It's like silly. You're foolish. How is it one God and you saying Allah is the greatest? The greatest of what? He's the oldest. The oldest of who? You have to have other beings in order to compare him to. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in the same category. You can't say he's the greatest. That means whatever he's the greatest of, there's other great beings that's doing the same great things. You just chose this one to feel as though because he's the greatest of all everybody else, he's the one. That's all it is. And that's what Nanar was requiring, the son of Enlil. All of those beings were fighting over the control over these Adamites. And that's why they would visit them and show up. And if they wasn't doing what they they wasn't behaving correctly. Like when you read in the book of when you read in the book of 2 Kings, right? You'll see how in 1 Kings, right? What verse is that? I think it's 2 Kings. It's 2 Kings where this being wipes out the rest of the Israel. He wipes out the Israel out of his sight. I think it's in 2 Kings. I got to find a quote where he literally wipes. Oh, 2 Kings, yes, right here in front of me. 2 Kings 23:27. It says, and the Lord Yahweh said, I will remove Judah also out of my sight, and as I removed Israel, and will cast off the city of Jerusalem, which I have chosen, in the house of which I said. Also in 2 Kings 14:15, the Lord said, Lord shall smite Israel as a reed is shaken in the waters, and he shall root up Israel out of the ground, out of the good land which he gave them. 2 Kings 17:23, for the children of Israel walked in all of the sins of Jeroboam, which they departed not from, until the Lord removed Israel. This Yahweh removed Israel out of his sight. He was disgusted with the Israelites. He didn't even look at them as beings who were worthy of anything. He would keep them in bondage. He would give them bondage to other tribes. He would kick them out of their land. He would give them starvation. That's not an all-loving, caring God. Where's the logic? Question. Nimrod is Sargon. Okay, so let's get back to this Nimrod, right? With these beings. These same beings was a part of this go down. Let us go down. The Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have what have they done? They all have one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. This, and he goes back. The Lord goes, this Yahweh travels back. Maybe he was in a chariot, maybe he was in a craft, who knows? He goes back to heaven, and in verse 7, he talks to them, his other Anunnaki, other Elohim, and he says to them, let us go down. He's summoning them. He said, let us go down there. We have to go down to earth because these people are unified. I'm not a Yahweh that wants people to be unified. I'm not a Yahweh that wants love. I'm not a Yahweh that wants peace. I'm not a Yahweh that wants everyone to get along like the religious world lies and tells the world God wants everyone to get along. He loves you. He wants unity. That is a lie. He literally went back and got help to come to the planet. And what does it say? Go down there and confound their language. So all of this confusion that the religious world claims their God is not partaken of, he is the author of confusion. And you literally say God is not the author of confusion when this word confusion is right there in verse 7 of chapter 11. Go and confound their language. What does the word confound mean? It means to make them mingle, to give them temper, to confuse. So who's responsible for the confusion on the planet? This same Lord. Who's responsible for evil in Genesis chapter 2, verse 9? This same Nanar, this same son of Enlil, the same evil being that y'all are worshiping, claiming he's a Lord and loving, that same being. Who's responsible for placing enmity and hate? All of a sudden, you got to put enmity and hate on the planet? Where do you find the enmity and hate at? Right here in chapter 3, right? Further down, it's in 15. It says, I will put enmity, right? Which is hate, hatred. This Hebrew word, strong number 342, 15, chapter 3, I will put enmity between thee and the woman. So he brought hate. Not only did he bring evil in Genesis 2:9, he also brought hate on the planet. So who's responsible for hate? Your God. The one you want everybody to worship. Who's responsible for evil? Your Lord, your Yahweh. You want everyone to worship. You want everybody to convert to. Y'all better get out of those ridiculous religious doctrines before it's too late. You're going to be sitting on the sideline waiting for a being to come that's not going to do nothing for you, and you're still going to be poor. You're still going to have these diseases. You're not going to get any help from your ancestors because you're calling on the wrong Lord. Who's responsible for the confusion? You just read that. He confounded the languages. So stop telling people if you convert to Islam, you'll be at peace. No, you won't, because your Allah is responsible. The same Allah of the Quran is the Allah of the Torah. You're responsible for placing confusion on the planet. The same being that you request, you say that, oh, you go pray to and he's going to bring and stop the devil. He had an agreement with the devil in Job with this Satan being who said, well, see, go test Job. He's allowing this being certain amount of power. So you're lying when the text says something different. The Actual Facts podcast, our Heavenly Father, the Thar, our deity, our God. And don't tell us we don't have a right to have a God. And so far as we have a living God. First of all, you can't show us your God. Yahweh won't come forth and address us. He won't sit down in front of us and let us ask these questions. You say, oh, he can't be seen. He's going to do it in due time. He won't answer his children's prayers. He won't address the confusion in the religious world. Why are the Muslims confused? Allah hasn't come forth to set the record straight. W.D. Fard hasn't come forth from the Nation of Islam to set the record straight. No God has come forth to help the African race. Where are they? Jehovah hasn't come forth. Jehovah Witnesses been around. They still selling one leaflet pamphlets, going door to door, trying to get someone to accept a spirit being that lives in the sky, that doesn't do anything for anyone on the planet, and is waiting for you on Judgment Day for you to see who did right and wrong so he can burn you up. Jehovah hasn't done anything. The Moorish Allah, Muslims, their God hasn't done anything for them. That no being has done anything for us. The white Caucasoid Christian God that you have looking like a methamphetamine addict on a cross, skinny, bone showing, ribs showing, blood, him coming, you saying that being died for our sins, yet it's still sin on the planet, right? The sin that your Lord gave the planet, those Adamites in chapter 10 of 3, as we just read. He introduced hate. So if he introduced hate, why can't you take hate? Because your Lord is a hateful being. Your Lord doesn't like human beings. He's not, he definitely doesn't like Africans. He allowed his Adamites, his creation. I'm talking about the creation that he bred in Genesis. He allowed them evil and wicked beings to enslave Africans and made you convert to their doctrine by a sword, by hanging, by murder, by rape, by forced conversion, and gave you nothing, took everything, and you're still in the same situation you was in BC. Right now, Negroes in America, religious people are in the same situation. All of your religious pastors, they already are out. They came out the closet that they don't care nothing about you. They just want the money. They just want your offering, right? The Muslim scholars, they just want to kill anybody that don't believe what they say. If you don't accept their book, they want to chop your head off. They want to hang you. That's what they're doing in Iran. That's their behavior. The Hebrew Israelites, all they do is curse and mock and say disgusting, foul, negative things out of their mouths, all to people that they're trying to convert. There's no love. Name a religious doctrine that converts you from love. That's why they fake miracles in their church. Have people getting up out of wheelchairs that they paid. It's literally a company you can call and have people, actors, come to your church and act like you're giving a prophecy to maintain the money flowing. It's all deception, and it must be destroyed. And this actual facts will destroy it, period. And that's what our job is. You might not like it now, but you're going to love it in the future, because the facts will heal you once you realize why you're not getting the help that you're supposed to get. So we have to get away from these gods and away from these lords. Any questions? The reason why I asked, because maybe the flood was for another reason. Okay, thank you, Divine Alignment, my sister. I appreciate you always tuning in and supporting. You're so welcome. I hope you sharing this, because I know a lot of our people are snowed in the weather. I hope y'all staying warm, and you realize you see what the planet Earth, you see what Mother Nature is doing, right? And you see all the catastrophe, all of the things that's taking place on the planet. You see where it's happening, right? Europe, India, frozen, snow, heat waves in the summer, frozen in the winter. The Arctic is melting. The planet Earth is tilting more. The water is moving to one side of the planet. Everything, but you see Africa is thriving because your ancestors are calling you. If you don't want to hear and don't want to listen, that's your fault. You can't say you didn't know. You can't say you didn't get abused for 500 years praying and nothing happened. The intelligence of us will wake up to these actual facts. The Bible does talk about there are African seeds in the Bible. There are black seeds, because you could never eliminate the black seed, because the Amorites always were trying to mix in. Thanks for that question. Someone asked, does the Bible talk about black people? Yes, there are black seeds in there. But the records of these individuals, they're not our records. They're records from a Caucasoid or a Mukasu or an Arab rendition. That's why the Arabs tell the story in their Quran. That's why when you look at the Mesopotamian records, they tell the story in Mesopotamia, and the Bible just copies that. They don't have, our records are not in the records of the Adamite are recorded, but they're not in our creation story. And we will on this Actual Facts podcast, we're going to address our original creation story in detail. Your creation story, the Africans' creation story, the Africans in the Americas, the diaspora, wherever you are, you have to be taught your creation story, right? And in that, it's millions of years old. It's not 6,000 years old. This is a 6,000-year-old book. You mean to tell me all of your information is in 6,000? You mean to tell me that all of your information, your descendancy comes from Jacob? A man that was running from his brother from stealing a bowl of red stew, a bowl of soup. That's your father? This Lord was telling you, read it. He said, I'm not the Lord of all of the world. I'm not your God. I'm not the God of all of you all over there in the Caribbean. All of you Negroes in Egypt and in Africa and South Africa and West Africa and Ghana and Djibouti and Libya and Algeria and Tanzania. I'm not your God. I'm the Lord of Isaac, Abraham, and Jacob. 3 people. And you want us to convert and give all of our power, all of our resources, all of our soul to 3 individuals in a book that hasn't been confirmed. Now, meanwhile, you don't have any DNA of any of these people. You don't have, I see a question. You don't have no DNA. All of these so-called prophets, all of these so-called holy men, all of these so-called kingdoms built. The only relic or so-called relic of a, what do you call kingdom of David is 3 steps. They got 3 steps. The wall of Solomon is a wall. There's no archaeological other findings. You mean to tell me with these lineage of kings and so-called prophets, you didn't preserve a fingernail? You don't have a bone, not one bone, right? A marsup, what is not marsupial? What is phalanges, right? Not one toe bone, not one shred of cloth. And you in the tombs of Egypt, thousands of years old. Our descendants, you digging up, you still finding graves right now in Egypt of our ancestors that left their faces on the walls. So you'll know how we looked, right? But when you look at the biblical text, right? When you look at the biblical text and you see you don't have a David's crown, you don't have a shield, you don't have a sword, you don't have the stone that beat the Goliath. You got the stories written, everything is in detail. The Philistines and Goliath and David and Saul and Solomon and Adonijah, and you don't have not one piece of shred of DNA that you could trace the lineage back. And all of these great men, y'all worship all these great men, billions of Muslims across the world, billions of Christians across the world, billions of Hebrews, right? And you don't have not one piece of DNA from not one prophet. Not only DNA, let's say fine, you don't have DNA. You don't have a gravesite? What excuse you going to tell me why you can't find a gravesite? So y'all didn't bury none of these great kings. And I think in Mexico, they got more builders of narcotic kingpins. They got cathedrals built for narcotic people that were doing evil, selling drugs and killing millions of people. These are prophets of God. You're a God that you say protected the words of God. And you don't have a tomb that you can say, here's the day. Believe nothing. Come on, that's ridiculous. Our people there's too many facts for our people to be stuck in these religious doctrines. Now, I see someone ask a question. Our creation story is when 12 elders came down. Okay. Yes. We'll speak on that because people have been speaking on the dolphin story, but if you don't explain it correctly, it sounds crazy. So y'all really, if y'all start explaining, I'm not saying what you're saying is crazy wise. I'm saying that you hear people, that's what the problem, right? People are grabbing bits and pieces from the Father's publications and they're running out of content. I'm gonna tell you what you're gonna see. A lot of them, they hear this actual facts. They may not tell you they're listening. They may not say they're paying attention, but they're listening to what the Father has told and is teaching his children. And they're grabbing bits and pieces and just using clips to say, oh yeah, the dolphin, you came from dolphin, but you're not explaining it. You have to be able to articulate and explain it with references and cross-reference and do your due diligence and stop playing with people's souls. It's not just about content. It's not just about getting clicks. It's about raising the minds of our people, because in this day and time, there is going to be a mass amount of insanity. Because when people really find out that their Lord, their God, their Yahweh, and his behavior, when they find out about this harvest that's spoken of in the book of Revelations, right? Let me look up harvest real quick, because there's many places where we have a book called Pahasad, the harvest, for those that want to know about it, right? Let me Pahasad, which is the harvest, when these beings, when they find out who this Yahweh is, they're going to be very, very afraid that this being is not who they thought, right? So you'll find harvest in the book of Revelations, chapter 14. Let's go to 14, and we'll talk about this harvest. This is what these beings are going to do in the last days, which we're in. Thrust in thy great sickle and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. The harvest. What is a harvest? Well, a harvest is when you see a ripe product, whether it's animals, whether it's plants, whether it's something you grown, you reap it out of its let's say fullest capacity, and like wine is harvested. Now, when you talk about wine, the harvest is simple when you speak about the wine press. Let's go there. Revelations 14:15. It says, and another angel came out of the temple crying with a loud voice, another Elohim. This is of the Anunnaki. Oh, I appreciate that, good brother. Thank you. Thank you all for your contributions. I appreciate you all just supporting the channel and doing it in a way that the way you can. So you see the brother, I'm trying to see a name. I can't really Born. Yeah, I'll just call you Born, right? Appreciate you, Samal, for that. You can all contribute in that way, and it's very much appreciated. It goes towards the future production. We got a lot of things that we're going to do, and I'll announce this at the end of this lecture. This year is our year. This year is a vote year. This year is the Nubian Nation, the Nubian Nation's year. So don't fret. We got everything lined up, and when we come correct for the Father, because that's our job. So I appreciate that. It says, let's get to this harvest so you'll see the insanities you have to be prepared for. You're going to see people going crazy because they're not going to be able to articulate or digest exactly what's taking place. The more and more these beings show themselves and this harvest comes forth, you'll see the harvest. These beings will come back for what? Another angel coming out of the temple crying with a loud voice, saying to him that sat on the cloud, thrust in thy sickle. The sickle is a symbol that you see on the Russian flag. When you see the Russian flag, it's a handle and it has a C thing, and they use it for the wine press, and they use wine is symbolic of the blood of harvesting the planet Earth, because it's the people that are the harvest. It's the Adamites. It's their creation that they bred, that they are dispensable. This is why they're able to kill them and drown them and plague them and destroy them, because they were not of original creation. Their deities have judged them now. Their gods have judged the Adamites and their bloodlines. They've judged their religious doctrines already. You was supposed to be a part of that. So separate the two. There's a group that are of Mesopotamia, the Adamite. You'll see this in the series 1 and 2, where I speak about the creation of man, the creation of the Caucasoid race, and I speak about the creation of the African race. I speak about it there in detail. But this race that was bred in Genesis was not just bred for labor, they were also bred for food. And it literally speaks about the white meat. All these abductions and things that's taking place, they abduct the white meat the same way you like the white breast of a chicken, or the same way you like a specific part of an animal. These beings are malicious, they're malevolent, they come from star systems, and they see this planet as food. Some species on the planet, this is just how it is. It's the same thing in your scientific community. In the world of, right, in the world of farmers, you breed animals. When you go to a farm, a slaughterhouse, that is the greatest deception against animals. You raise them, you feed them, you pet them, you love them, you call them, you even groom them. Right? And then you eventually, at some point, you harvest them. You kill them for food. How do you think animals feel when they see human beings deceiving them, raising them, feeding them, just to fatten them up so you can kill them? And you think that came from your mind? No, that was introduced from your deity, from these gods, not Africans not you, Africans on the planet, a Fafare Khan, not you. I'm saying these these Adamic religions, these humans were bred for that, and their beings are going to do the same thing. This is why they say the Lord is my shepherd. Everything is about being a cattle. You say, oh, they're sheep. Why? Because you're easily herded, because you don't sense the danger, because you've been rocked asleep, because you've been given little nibbles and kiblets of food and things, and you feel like a prayer was answered here, and God, Jehovah gave you a job, and Jehovah did this for you here and there. Meanwhile, your whole life suffering, you get a little morsel of some type of blessing. You think you want to go pray and cry and thank, but that same being is going to harvest at the end. And it says, and he sat on the cloud, and he thrust in his sickle of the earth, and the earth was reaped. And another angel came out of the temple, which is in heaven, in the heavens, and he also having a sharp sickle. These beings are coming down to kill. And for what? Why are they killing? Because of this great supper. The great supper of who? These Anunnaki. And I saw the beast. Let's go back to the supper. Revelations 19, right? If you go, it says the Revelations 19, verse 19. Let's go back to 18, where it says, actually 17. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, meaning it was bright. He cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowl. Now, take heed to this word fowl. This word fowl is the cherubim. They had wings, right? The fowl that fly in the midst of the heavens. These beings were flying, these gargoyle beings. When you see gargoyles, when you see these seraphim or cherubim with wings, they say the cherubim had wings at the end, or the east and the west of the Ark of the Covenant, where the blood was given. This is the same being. And this being, Nanar, Enlil, is what? He's calling these fowl that are flying. That says what? In the midst, come and gather yourselves. You don't talk to birds and say, if the people say, oh, those are birds. It's not birds. You don't say, come and gather yourselves. You don't give orders to birds to come gather yourselves. That's not how you talk. These are the cherubim that this Enlil, Nanar, and all these beings are over when they come to harvest the planet of their species that they bred, in the wicked species that will be judged, right? This will take place in the last days. We're in Revelations 18 right now. This is Revelations 19. It's a chronological record of what will take place, because the Anunnaki, or their overlords, recorded their telomeres and recorded their 6,000-year rule, because they gave them dominion for only 6,000 years, because their genetics will be wiped out. And that's why their system is falling. That's why Babylon is falling. You're in Revelations 18. And in Revelations 19, when these beings return, when they say the so-called rapture for them, or raptor, right? You'll be on a menu, the men going to be there. What will they say? I'm not speaking this. Don't blame Dr. Malachi Z.K. York. Don't blame the Nuwapian or Nubians for this so-called doctrine that you think someone made up. I'm reading your book. We are reading your book. Listen to what this says was going to happen. It says, that's a good question. Keep that question. Don't delete that question. That's a good question. It says, right, the midst of the heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great. The word supper there is in the Greek is dipnon. It means dinner. That is a chief meal, a feast, a supper. Gather yourselves together for the supper of the great God. The supper of the great God. What supper are you talking about? Revelations 8:19, 18. That ye may eat. That ye may eat the flesh of kings and the flesh of captains. This is cannibalism. Your God, your Yahweh, your Jehovah, whoever it may be, is asking other beings to gather themselves so they can partake in flesh eating again, in a great supper. This is sickness. For you to accept and read and take this book and say, I want to be a part of that. That we may eat the flesh of kings, the flesh of captains, the flesh of mighty men, the flesh of horses and them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. And that's not the only incident. That's not the only incident. I appreciate that. Rasan, Tawutek Zamal. I appreciate you, Zamal. I appreciate all the love. That's real love. I appreciate that. Live from Kenya. I appreciate you. Oh, that's a Kenya flag. Okay, Pity. That's your name? Tawutek. Okay, check. I will check my inbox. It says, how do these so-called advanced beings see another advanced beings as food? They're not advanced beings that they're looking at as food. That you're thinking that the advanced beings are seeing advanced beings. The beings that they're talking about, the Adamites, were not advanced. The Adamites, when you read Genesis chapter 6, it says that, what does it says about these beings? It says that, and God saw that the wickedness of the Adamites. This word Adamite is there. It's not us talking. People like, oh, this is right there. The word Adam is the Strong's number 120. It says, and Elohim or Yahweh saw that the wickedness, the Ra'ah, evil of man, of the Adamites, was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil. So they were not looking at advanced beings in the same way. They were looking at a bred being who was evil. They were continuously in their heart. Do you know what that means? To be evil continuously in your heart? That means every imagination, everything that you think of is evil. And you can see it in the actions when you think every day about killing, how to make more advanced bombs, how to genetically modify food, how to pollute the air, how to pollute the water, creating cars that pollute the air, creating chemicals in factories that destroy the ecosystem, breeding and raping and going into other lands, mixing your diseased blood, knowing you have Rh negative blood, mixing with Africans and other races to breed, to prevent you from dying out, to going into lands, stealing people, taking other people to other lands to build your own lands, subjugating them to your rule, teaching them your laws, giving them your religious doctrines. That majority of the Africans or the diaspora Africans in America have Adamite mentalities. So they don't know that they've been taught by these beings. They don't know that. Oh, wow. Okay. Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. Am I clear? Am I clear? I should be clear now. Okay. So any questions? I may have to cut the stream, cut the live, because check my battery. Some reason my charger's not working. That's real strange. That has never happened. Wow. Oh shoot. I feel like something is about to happen. So let me end this. I don't want to lose this stream, y'all. So I think I have a few more minutes. But any questions? I appreciate every. Can you hear me now? I know I'm clear. Okay, what will happen 2030, 2043. Okay. What I would like you all to do, yes, that's a lot. That's some information that we're going to cover, right? I just got thrown off because of the my charger. It's just puzzling me how it's not working. Excuse me. But I hope we are clear. We had a lot to cover. Yes. You know how it is. You know when we start rolling, things get crazy, right? People the streams start ending, lights go out, all types of stuff. But we still going to keep going with it, right? So it's no problem. But listen, I want you all. Let me just say this: we have a lot to cover this year. A lot. We have our vote. We have um, so much freedom fight. We're gonna have to do a specific lecture or just a open. We're gonna have I do a live where we'll just have a discussion. All of the family members, everyone globally, worldwide, who are part of the Nubian Nation, just want to join, want to inquire how to move forward. All of your support is appreciated. What you're doing, as far as just participating and listening and understanding what the Father has taught us and what He teaches us, and what He teaches us is incredible, and it's going to open your mind as the lectures go on. We have a part 3 to do on February 9th. It's called The Crucifixion of Christianity. We also have, I wanted to introduce you all to the Malachi York Foundation, which is a children's foundation, which we have here in Ghana, West Africa, only in West Africa. At West Africa, Ghana is the headquarters, where we give to underprivileged children. We feed the homeless children, is the children of Medina. There's a lot of children there. I go there, feed them once every, I try to do it once a week. You know, when we have the contributions, it's a registered nonprofit organization here in Ghana, the Dr. Malachi York Foundation, founded in 2007. I also founded it in other countries, Liberia. We went to Nigeria as well, but we're gonna make sure that the Dr. Malachi York Foundation is doing well here. So if you want to contribute to that, I'll let you know how to do that. We'll have uploads, videos as well. I have some great production coming. We're going to be traveling the continent, right? Uh, we're going to be traveling the continent to take these actual facts to other countries where people have been requesting, like Botswana, Namibia, all over. We're currently here in Ghana, so we're going to take the podcast from here, this location, to other parts of Africa. So it's important that you share and let everyone know we're on the move. When we work always, first and foremost, remember, we're always working on the freedom of Dr. Malachi Z.K. York. He will be home. He will be free. That's without a doubt. Everything will tie in. The timing will be perfect. He has been incarcerated for 24 years, and he's holding strong. He trusts that we're going to do what we need to do. He trusts that we're going to liberate ourselves, but we have to do it for ourselves. No one can come help us. No one can come teach us how to do it. We have to do it. It's a do it yourself program, and it's nation building. And you'll see it once I lay it out. I did a lecture on it. I think episode 7 or 8 or something like that. But I have to reiterate it so we can reiterate what we have, the rights we have, and how we're going to survive what is about to take place. So this is how you can assist. You can just be supportive by tuning in, and you will have other avenues and methods. The website will be launched where you'll be able to register. We have global identification coming. for our people here in Africa and the globe. If you want to be a part of our nation centered here in West Africa, you'll have the availability. I'll make sure everyone is covered. I'll make sure everyone is good. All of your rights are protected. I'll do it from an international law perspective, all the way down to protecting our president, protecting our government, protecting our people, protecting our nation, protecting our citizens. Everything will be protected. It is in a specific layout. It's no sound. Really? Did the sound go out? Oh, okay. I was about to say, as soon as we start talking a good talk, but just tune in. So I think we're gonna have a lot more videos coming up because it's a lot more to cover and we don't have a lot of time. So it's important that we get all of this out. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you share. The main thing is growing the channel. We're growing incredibly, but we have to grow in order to reach the people we're responsible for, because you all now are responsible. Once you know about this outformation and you know who these beings are, you know who Enki, Enlil, Nanar, and the Yahweh, this bloodthirsty Yahweh of the Torah and of the biblical text. Once you know who these beings are, right, it's your responsibility to tell others. And I was going to get into cannibalism, right? The cannibalism part of it. Thank you. However, I'll save that for the crucifixion of Christianity, and where we have to address everything about Christianity and all of the books that, and again, if you need any books, if you're inquiring about any books, please email me. I'll let you know the closest bookstore. I'll let you know how to get the books, where you can get them from, right? You'll be able to have access to the books that we talked about here, that we made reference to. Everything that we discuss in this actual facts is coming from our father, our president, our chief, the one and only, His Excellency Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, the God in flesh, the Holy One. Everything about him is just incredible, amazing, divine. And I want to represent that. And that's why I speak to you all the way that I do, because I have to represent the Father as best as we are taught to do, and getting you the actual facts and as thoroughly as possible, right? Email me, Born King, email me, right? The actual facts, and over the 1,500 books. We went over some of the books. Next, we'll go over a few of the books. A lot of the books I don't have with me, but I can get them to you, so it's no worries. And sometimes, is Inky King Yahweh here? And no, that's not that Negro, not Inky. He just got a nice white garb. Those guys are lying. And to tell them I said it. And if they want to have a discussion about it, then we can have the discussion about it. All of those podcasts, they definitely afraid. Seriously, they know I'm here. They know I'm teaching. They know I'm going into the books of what the Father said. I'm not playing games and using his doctrine under a different title, under a different name, under a different cloak. A lot of them do that. They take the Father's doctrine, you hear it, and they say, "Oh, Anunnaki and uh, transcendental beings." You see, when we talking about intergalactical beings, people want to start talking about intergalactical beings. You don't hear it in detail like you do with us, right? So when that happens, okay, it's okay, because it's catching on. It's just we have to maintain the sources. The source gets his recognition. We have to let people know. Listen, Dr. Malachi Z.K. York been writing this since 1970. This is not anything new. It may be new to people that has coming online, new generations. Uh, exactly. Yeah, he's not. There's ink. No. First of all, Inky is not. That's not in Atlanta. These people are crazy. It's a lot of them that's going to show themselves as fraud. But I don't want to. I don't want to get into that. I just want to make sure that what we do here, and you all get the actual facts from His Excellency. So, any last questions? Appreciate you all. Again, email. I'm going to come bring this to a close. We typically do about 3 hours, but this is good. I think I covered enough. Hopefully, I covered enough, but we have more to talk about. We have more content coming. If our ancestors are calling us, how do we respond to them? And how can we confirm that we have indeed connected with them? They're called, you have to call them. They can't call you. They can, but okay, let me not say they can't. It's nothing that our ancestors cannot do. I'll answer this last question. I'll end. You have to connect with them. You have to connect with them. It's like if you left your mother's or grandparents' house and you went to another city, they don't know where you are. That's like you got lost in the religious doctrines. You went and started worshiping other foreign gods that was enslaving their ancestors, your ancestors. They're not too happy about that. They're not too appreciative that you found the slave master's God to begin to worship him, the ones that abused their family, their descendants, that they watch get abused, that they watch get destroyed, that they watch get killed. They're not too happy with that. So you have to ask for forgiveness for going to the Arabs and going to Mesopotamia, going to Yahweh bloodthirsts and giving blood sacrifices and eating fake crackers of body of flesh and drinking fake blood as wine. You have to ask forgiveness for that. You have to let them know that you reconnected with them and that you appreciate them for what they've done for you by giving you life and passing the divine seed down in your genes. Well, yes, male ego, male, but then yeah. So you have to make the connection once you ask for forgiveness and you acknowledge them and you let them know that you won't forget them. And if you want the prayers, I can send you email me. I can send you your prayers and the chants and the links and everything to get you realigned and re in tune and get in tune with them. It's not hard. We're not asking for a donation. We're not asking for what is it? What is that? Tithes. That's not what happens. We all take care of each other. We don't use God or use Allah or use Jehovah as a means for making money. No, you work hard and the fruits of your labor will pay off. The things that if you're doing what you're supposed to do, your ancestors will provide and we will rise together. But until then, right? If you worshiping other gods, they're going to slap you upside your head. You're going to wake up with nothing the same day you think you've been doing for the last 6,000 years, worshiping them. The next episode, okay, wise words. Yeah, I'll try to do one a week. One a week. I'll do one a week. If y'all if y'all would like three more than three a month, I don't know. You have to act. If you ask me, that's something I'll do. I'll do my best. Right. The email, the prayers, yeah, everything email. If you want to get all of that information, just email me. I'll send it over to you. And can you get more than one episode? Yeah, get me to 10,000 subscribers. I'll do I'll do 4 episodes. I'm joking. I'll do 4 episodes regardless. I'll just try to do one a week. But you also have to participate by giving let's say topics that you would like to hear. Questions that I feed off of you all. If you give out for me, if you have inquiries, then I'll say, okay, this is what they're looking for. But if you don't, participate in that way, then I won't know what you're interested in. So try to do that. Leave a note to say, listen, in the community, I'll try to. I want some information on this. I would like information on that. Can you speak about Dr. Malachi K. York's book here? We can do that. Okay. Hold on. There's another question someone asks. Okay. Yeah. Get us to 10,000, 100,000. Get us to 1,000,000. There's some stations or channels here with millions of subscribers and they're talking nothing. Can we get okay? Someone asked the question I wanted to answer. Okay. All right. So until next time, February 9th. But I'll have a video up next week as well. Appreciate you all. You got your 3 hours out of me. It's been amazing. Great. Share. Check out the other episodes. Put them on replay, repeat, binge watch. Support the actual facts. Become a member. Join the nation. You have a nation of your own. You don't have to worry about anything. Your ancestors got you. Panatharu has you. We have you. Baba, the Father, has sacrificed so much for your protection. And so we just have to make sure that we do our part in love and unity. So Wadu, take care. Until next time.